Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents. Welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour. I am the Malcontent. Today is Thursday, September 9, 2021. There's good news tonight. I really wish I could say that, but no, unfortunately, there really isn't good news tonight. There's some really bad news actually coming out of the eastern part of the state. There is good news. There's some good stuff that's in the world. And there's some good things that are happening on multiple fronts, but we're going to have to kind of churn through some of the unhappy news. We're not streaming on Twitter again. I don't know why. We should. Everything was set up. It didn't work tonight. I've already put a thing on Twitter saying, hey, with the link to Twitch, malcontentnews.tv. If anyone wants to go over on Twitter and amplify that tweet, that'd really be appreciated. This would be a good point for me also. I've gotten really bad about this. This is the time. Spam those hearts. Go ahead and spam those hearts. Let those mods and admins, researchers, and everybody else know that you appreciate all of the hard work that they do. I still have stuff churning in from a news standpoint. So that is why I'm just pausing for a second to check something. And no, there was nothing actionable that we have on there. Well, we're not. We're getting our numbers. Deardra, I'm seeing what your thing here is about Redmond Elementary. We're crowdsourcing right now for Lake Washington, so we are dependent upon people sending us in and sending these notifications. So if there is something going on at Redmond Elementary, I need someone to forward me that letter. We do trust but verify, and I'm not questioning your integrity. I just hope you can appreciate I need, trust but verify. I need to see the verifiable thing. So if you're in Kirkland, if you have the message from Redmond Elementary, or I should say if you're in the Lake Washington School District and you have the message from Redmond Elementary, then forward it to me, tips@malcontentment.com. I'm going to put it in the chat. Go ahead and forward it to me. I just dropped that link into the chat, and we will update the story if we have to. I'll literally just update it on the air here. If I get that later, then we'll hold off and update it until tomorrow because that update is out. For North Shore and Bellevue, we're pulling from their dashboards. And as we understand it, Lake Washington School District is working on the dashboards. I want to start off tonight because it's not good. And I haven't started one of these COVID update shows in a while with saying this. If you're watching this show, we don't get people to comment in here that say this a lot. You're scaring people. That's you projecting your scared on me. And no, you're not going to project your feelings on me. Fear is born out of not understanding and not having information. Your reaction from tonight's show should not be of fear. Your reaction from tonight's show should be, I am informed, I have been educated, and I can make the best decisions now for myself, my family, and the people that I care about based on the information that I have. Oh, that's an interesting development in court, Courtney there. And again, I haven't had people, flood the comment stream here with "you're scaring people" in a long time. We got scary stuff to talk about tonight. It's not good in Washington State, malcontents. It's really, really not good. I am going to kind of run through this whole update, and then we're going to talk about some other topics, and I'll get into kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the first is kind of the We are continuing to be plateaued as a state, running between 500 to about 535 new cases per 100,000 people. We want it to be under 25, under 20. So we are running about 20 times higher than where we should be. Franklin County in particular today, their numbers were super alarming. They're at 1,328 new cases per 100,000 people, which is out there in Eastern Washington. I think I have seen a couple of counties hit 1,400 over the last 18 months. That's really, really close to a record. That's got to be really close to a record in Franklin County. Clallam County and Okanagan County actually dropped below 1,000. They're back up over 1,000 today. And Lincoln County got up over 800 today. King County, we're at 302.2. That's basically unchanged from yesterday. It's a lot better than 511. But again, the target is 25. Washington State Department of Health, we don't pull their number for case positivity because they continue to have that footnote on there that, the data is incomplete and the data is dirty. According to Johns Hopkins University, our 30-day positivity is 13.36. Our 7-day positivity is 13.74. If we look by age group, if we look by age group and we look at the hospitalization state, ages 20 to 34 dropped, ages 50 to 64 went up, and ages 80 and above went up. The 80 and up is really concerning because over 95% of people that age in our state are vaccinated. And when you get to that rate of over 95%, you're not going to move the needle much, because now you're starting to get into people that do have legitimate religious or moral objections, that have legitimate medical conditions that they can't get vaccinated. And you have a small sliver of people that are like, you just can't make me get vaccinated. The reason that is really concerning is for those people 80 and above, that's probably, I don't have the numbers, that's why I say probably, a fair number of breakthrough cases, and the outcomes for people of that age who get Delta is really poor, vaccinated or not. The other thing, hospitalizations were flat, so that's good for that age group. Little bit of good news. I'm really going to just try to glean out good news where I can find it, because I don't want this to be all gloom and doom. Hospitalization rate from birth to 11 years old did drop. So there is some good news there. Hospitalizations for ages 65 to 79 went up. it's an interesting age strip because 65 to 69, even with breakthrough cases, do really well. Once you get 70 and above, their outcomes are not very, very good. USA Today COVID tracker reported 48 deaths in the state of Washington yesterday. There is probably still some catching up going on from the holiday weekend. But that number is probably close to one-day reality. In a press conference today, Governor Jay Inslee is initiating a statewide outdoor large event mask mandate that essentially mirrors the mask mandates that were implemented in King County, where we're located, and Pierce County, where Tacoma is located. So what the statewide mandate is, if you're at an outdoor event, there's more than 500 people, you got to wear a mask, vaccinated or not. It is strongly recommended. If you are outdoors in an area where there is a significant number of people, you can't socially distance 6 feet, and it's challenging to move around, or you're not moving around, you should wear a mask, vaccinated or not. If you are just out, out for a jog, out for a walk, and you're in your bubble, right, your little circle. I think a lot of people have their COVID bubbles that probably watch our show, and there's people that don't typically watch our show or think all of this is just BS, don't have their little COVID bubbles. But if you're in a little, then yeah, masks are fine. This is an expansion of the mask mandate that went on to August 23rd. The governor was specifically asked, why aren't we limiting capacity in restaurants, in bars, in venues? Like, why? Because again, we're going to kind of get into the real yucky part. And the answer to that is by Dr. Umar Shah, who is our Secretary of Health. We have that tool today, vaccines, and that is the tool we are using today. The other thing that Governor Inslee was asked was, I'm using the word vaccine passport. They're not using the word vaccine. So vaccine passport. That's the term I'm using. And Governor Inslee was asked essentially, would a vaccine passport, which is being considered in King County, and they don't quite have it in Clallam, and Jefferson County is on the table. He said it's not some quote, it is not something that's going to happen in the next couple of days, but we are looking at it. So I would say a vaccine, again, I use it real loosely, passport is coming. On the subject of Clallam County, Dr. Allison Berry, who implemented a vaccine passport to go into bars and restaurants. You essentially have to show a negative PCR test or your vaccination card to go into a bar or restaurant. Jefferson and Clallam counties are essentially the entire northern half of the Olympic Peninsula from coast to coast. So it includes places like Sequim, Port Angeles, Port Townsend. Those are probably the biggest cities that people think of in there. Technically Nia Bay, but the reservation off there has their own protocols, and they have very, very strict protocols there. Well, she's getting threats. She's getting threats for doing her job. To the point that she is afraid to go to her office. And what she had to say about that was, it's certainly affecting my life, the way I take care of my child, the way I try to guarantee both of our safeties, and the way that I do her job. King 5 contacted the sheriff's office, and they said they've done some investigation, but nobody has broken any laws at this point, so there's really nothing they can do. By the way, the sheriff out there, not supportive of masks or vaccines or any of these mandates. Far be it from I to suggest that some of those who work forces, did I just suggest it? This is going to segue into the next story, which is really gross. We had the insurrection on January 6th, and the insurrection failed. And there's a lot of things that has happened since that insurrection occurred. One of the things that people who are kind of like about is a lot of the people that were involved in the insurrection turned on themselves afterwards. friends, family, coworkers, reported people, and this right-wing anti-government movement, right? Because then it was like, we're going to come back in February, we're going to come back in March, we're going to come back, right? And it just, their numbers continue to dwindle. And we have seen this as we started getting here, right? As if we look inside of the local protests that were going on, March, April, May, June. We even look at, say, what happened in Portland about 3 weeks ago, where the Portland police were like, yeah, we're just going to let you guys fight it out and sit at home. By the way, the Portland police were like, yeah, that was a really bad idea on our part. And what did we see, right? If in 2018, the Proud Boys did this thing and it had a huge, right, thousands of people in Portland. In 2019, they did something and there was a smaller presence in Portland. When they had the 2018 thing, by the way, I was in Portland that day picking up a car I bought. And it was really, really weird when I got dropped off. There was like no one. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, the Proud Boys are doing a thing there. I'm like, oh, great. In 2019, a little smaller. In 2020, right, they had the thing on September 26th, right? And everybody was like, this is the start of the American Civil War. And like 200, 300 Proud Boys showed up, and about 200 reporters from around the world showed up to see the start of the American Civil War. They left early. They went to Vancouver and got drunk in the parking lot of a mall. They had their thing 3 weeks ago, and there was even less numbers that showed up there. So the movement is shrinking. But what they've done, what the Proud Boys in particular have done, is they have shifted where they are recruiting from. Because now what they're doing is they have found that there is intersectionality between the anti-vaccination movement and their anti-government white nationalist movement. And what they're doing is they have a number of, there's a Facebook group, 500,000 people in this Facebook group, 500,000. And what they're looking for, and it's not just the Proud Boys, it's Oath Keepers, it's other white nationalists and right-wing organizations. What they're looking for are people who are very, very active and come across as being radicalized, right? And then they start, hey, I'll be your Facebook buddy, right? And they start talking. Then they pull them down into Tor and Telegram and right into the bowels. And they're trying to recruit people. This is why you're starting to see Proud Boys showing up at abortion clinics, at anti-vax rallies, at anti-mask rallies, at schools. Obstinately there, using a strategy that was used by the brown shirts in the 1920s and the 1930s. We're here for security. And you know, what happened in Olympia where Tiny got shot? There is an excellent piece in the Daily Kos that definitely expands over what we wrote on what happened. And normally I would not go read the Daily Kos. I really don't. We really try not to, hey, this is really partisan. Go look at them. We really try not to. We will sometimes I will connect to something to Fox News where to combat that's just the liberal media. Of course, Fox News is now considered the liberal media in this insane, I went off this timeline. Rick Sanchez, I went off this timeline. Anyway, what happened was the Proud Boys showed up as security for a political candidate that was holding an anti-vaccination, anti-mask rally in Olympia because Antifa's coming. And what happened is that Antifa never came. There really wasn't a whole big Antifa movement down in Olympia. And there's reasons like that's essentially also kind of blown apart in Washington State. And that's a whole separate conversation for a different show. So the Proud Boys, and we know this because it's all on video, on live streams. They were like, okay, we're going to go hunting. That, by the way, is the word they used. And about 50 armed Proud Boys started going through the streets of Olympia. The whole thing is filmed, 20 minutes worth. They're accosting, harassing, and attacking people like, that person's Antifa. And it's literally just like people that live in Olympia that are just trying to do their lives. A reporter, Alyssa Azar, is brutalized. She is bear maced. She is pulled into a bar by patrons who then don't allow people to come in and get her. Part of that attack is on video. Her screams are on video, and the Proud Boys are laughing while they're doing this. Then at some point, there is a confrontation that leads to Tiny getting shot. Tiny was shot in the leg, and he is apparently out of the hospital. There was conflicting information. The AP made it. The Associated Press made it sound like he was in the hospital overnight. There's another. The Daily Cost story makes it sound like he was treated and released. Hospital resources are wicked thin. We're going to get into that one in a minute. So in all reality, the hospital would be doing everything they could to push him out the door if they could push him out the door. That has nothing to do with Tiny, his criminal history, his background, or anything like that. That's just the reality that we are in right now in the state of Washington. So this leads this whole big, long explanation. We're going to go to September 18th because this is really important to the next story. September 18th, there is this planned protest, Justice for J6 in Washington, D.C. The Washington, D.C. police has already said all hands on deck. There's we're going to put the fence up, but it's not official. There's a number. The media bugs me sometimes. And this is a story that goes they're going to put the fence up. It's it's not official. My understanding is they have formally requested to put the fence up. Now, this is where I want to get into the intersectionality of the anti-vax and the anti-mask movement, because this is really important. On January 6th, during the Stop the Seal rally, one of the speakers was Del Bigtree. Now, who is Del Bigtree? He was one of the speakers. I know Giuliani was there. I know Jim Jordan spoke, right? I know Trump spoke. Del Bigtree. Del Bigtree is one of the leaders of ICAN. ICAN is one of the top purveyors of anti-vaccination propaganda, not just in the United States, but in the planet. And ICAN has been around since 2012. So Del Bigtree's involvement, this isn't a COVID thing and he became involved in this. Del Bigtree produced the movie Vaxxed. Vaxxed was backed by ICAN and the financial backing of Lisa Sells, whose husband is a billionaire and a hedge fund manager. Lisa's anti-vax activity goes all the way back to 2012 with the whole thing with it causes autism and the mercury and all, which all of that has been disproven, discredited, and it's a big part of the reason why we're in the shit show we're right now. So Del Bigtree, obviously, if he was on the stage speaking on January 6th, is an insider in this, right, in the Trump circle. They weren't going to let any a-hole up. And I mean, I get it. It's they let Mike Lindell talk all the time, and he's an a-hole. Look at it from the view of their view, not your view. Not going to let any a-hole get on that stage. Del Bigtree got up there and railed against Fauci, railed against, the COVID, blah, 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 all of this stuff. All right? So now we know about Del Bigtree, and he's still involved in all of this. Matt Brainerd is the person behind the Justice for J6 protest that's coming up in Washington, D.C. on September 18. And I will tell you, because we can see in the chats, and there's people on the research team that can see in the chats, the chatter that we are seeing is on the same level of December 2020. The question you always have here, though, is is it or is it reality? We'll have to see. I know if somebody had some spare time, what they could probably do is look at hotel bookings in the Washington, D.C. area for the 16th, 17th, and 18th and see. Tiny is not an FBI informant. Emily, I just seen your comment there. I know it passed a long time. You're thinking, not Rufio. You're thinking Enrique, who just went to jail for 5 months. Roger, hello. And Farmer Barb, by the way, hello. Okay, let me keep going on this. Matt Brainerd is the person behind September 18. Now, Del Bigtree has a podcast that's well-watched, extreme right-wing podcast. It's on Rumble that is called The High Wire. Guess who is a frequent guest on The High Wire? Yeah, Matt Brainerd. The connection between Del Bigtree, ICANN, Lisa Sells, and Matt Brainerd and the January 6th insurrection, what's coming up on September 18th, and the anti-mask, anti-vax movement, this is a tinfoil hat. This is, you could do 5 minutes on Google and find mainstream articles. You can go find Del Bigtree's speech on January 6th, the fact that he's the producer of Vaxxed is up there. His involvement with ICANN is up there as the co-leader with Lisa Sells. So he's working with Lisa Sells paid to make the documentary Vaxxed. This isn't tinfoil hat land. The white nationalists, right-wing, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, they are recruiting out of the anti-vaccination movement because not everybody in the anti-vaccination movement is in that camp based upon oh my God, the vaccine is this or that or the other. They're in the camp because the government can't tell me what to do. And those are the people that they're looking for because they want to recruit them in. And of course, the way that they recruit them in softly is, well, you can come join us and do security at this anti-vaccination rally because Antifa's coming, right? Oh, yeah, we got to keep the liberals out. And so they're pulling from there. The other thing that you have to understand is this. 75% of the United States is now adults, 18 and above, have had at least one dose of the COVID vaccine now. At least 25% of all of adults. And remember, when we say that 25%, you're going to have 5 or 10%. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It can make their teeth white. It can make them live to 150 years old. If it's a man, it can increase their pecker size by 2 inches, length and girth. And they can go all night long with multiple big O's. They're not going to get it. That's it. There's 5 to 10% that won't. So what we're left with, if you go with that 5 to 10%, is you really only have about 15% of Americans left. And that 15% is slowly starting to move over. They're either starting to move over because, well, all right, it's FDA approved. There's actually some people that have moved the needle on that. There's others that are moving over because it's like, holy shit, 3 of my neighbors died. My best friend died. I guess this is real. And there are others that are slowly just starting to go like, it's some of the stuff like we point out on some of these conspiracy theories, right? Where we call out some of them are just like the logical paradox that that you're running with here is just bonkers. Like West Virginia governor yesterday, worried about getting tracked, walking around with a cell phone. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Jid Justice, for saying that part out loud. And the thing is when I say it, right, in those circles, but when someone like Jim Justice says it, even if he convinces 100 people, he's going to move the needle. Their numbers are shrinking. The 88% of nurses are vaccinated. 96% of doctors are vaccinated. 90% of the U.S. military active duty was vaccinated back on August 9th, either first shot or fully vaccinated. Their numbers are shrinking. They are shrinking because people are crossing the lines, and quite frankly, they're shrinking through attrition. As that happens, the people that are trying to control that movement are getting more desperate. And what do more desperate people do? They scream louder, they get more aggressive, and some of them move to violence. And this is why we see what's going on. Big, long explanation on why there's intersectionality between the anti-mask movement and the anti-government movement. And by the way, I'm not the only person saying it. There was a story in USA Today about it a couple of days after I wrote our piece up on our Facebook page, which I am going to refine and actually turn into a story. This brings us to Vancouver, Washington, which has been a flashpoint of Proud Boy and Patriot prayer protests at Skyview High School. Last week on Friday, 3 schools in Vancouver, Washington had to go on lockdown for about 90 minutes. Proud Boys and Oath Keepers harassed students and teachers. Teachers had to move to guard doors. In-school security at Skyview had to prevent people from trying to enter into the school. It wasn't a good situation. All of this is circulating around a 14-year-old, and her name is Melanie Gabrielle. Melanie Gabrielle made news last year in Oregon because she is co-founder of a group called Open Schools USA. The other co-founder is Michelle Morales Walker. Now, last year in Oregon, Melanie was saying that she had to drop out. She was in the 8th grade at the time. She couldn't handle remote learning. She felt isolated. She was suffering from depression, and she was demanding that the schools be opened. Well, now the schools are opened, but now she is demanding that she shouldn't have to wear a mask, and is claiming that this is, harmful to her mental health, that she has to wear a mask, and she wants a 504 exemption. Now, they were going to have a meeting with the school on Wednesday, and the right wing, being driven either by Melanie's mother or by Michelle Morales Walker, don't know that far, was calling for, again, right-wing protesters to come out and protest the schools. And in the language that was used on Wednesday morning, the language was damn close to an open threat. Basically, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but it's like, we're either going to be, this is about the 504 discussion. We're either going to be dancing on their lawn, or we're going to go to the next level or something along that lines, right? This isn't good. So in light of all of this that was going on, the Vancouver, Washington school district went to court to get a emergency injunction protection order to essentially block one female, which I'm going to presume is Michelle Morales Walker, and a bunch of John Does, which are going to be your Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer people, from protesting anywhere within 1 mile of any Vancouver, Washington school. This is our state. And they weren't just going after the school board or the principal. They were harassing teachers and students last week. It's not hyperbole. It's not liberal media. This is what the school is saying. This is what people on the ground are saying. By the way, Vancouver, Washington Police, which is Chud Central, they didn't arrest anybody or do anything about that. No trespassing charges or anything, because some of those who work forces and some of those people, they're aligned with the anti-vax and the anti-mask and the anti-government movement. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud because I'm disgusted really by this. Now, one of the things I don't know, and I'm not going to, is Melanie Gabrielle operating on her own volition? Is she being manipulated by a parent? She's 14 years old. I will say this. I've seen her speak. I've seen the videos, because there's a lot of videos up there speak. Very articulate young woman. Does not come across, to me as somebody, that necessarily is going to be easily manipulated. She's aligning herself with some really bad people and playing a very, very dangerous game. And it's one of those things like, I'm not exactly sure what your end game is. But if your end game is, I'm going to force everyone not to wear a mask because my freedoms, it doesn't work that way. The world just doesn't work that way. It is shameful that in the state of Washington, school children in what is one of our larger communities are having to operate in fear. And here's another thing that's disgusting, because remember, Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys are essentially white nationalists. Well, we're not. We got Tiny. You know what happens to Tiny if the Proud Boys ever got the world that they wanted, right? Tiny is thrown off the back of the truck. It's going to be one of the first to go. We really, that's not going to happen. Okay, let's go back to our history here. Let's go back to Germany. Let's go back to the brown shirts. Rom, leader of the brown shirts, right? Organized all of that. But, he wasn't holed down with the whole... And so they got rid of him in the Night of the Long Knives, and they labeled him a homosexual, which he probably was. They were cool with it. They were okay to look the other way because he was very good at disciplining and organizing and training the brown shirts. But once they got into a place where they didn't need him anymore, Rom met a really bad end. Study your history. Or not. Up to you. All right, let's keep going. Washington State. IHME forecast, it got worse. The IHME updated their forecast through December 1. They did it maybe about 2 weeks ago, and they were predicting, like, best case scenario for December 1. Washington State would get up around 7,500 COVID deaths total, not between then and now, total, from going back to our first recorded fatality on February 29, 2020. That was a leap year. You're lying. There's no such thing as February 29. It was a leap year. They now have it, if we stay the course, at almost 8,900 by December 1. Fatalities are forecasted to peak all the way out on November 2nd. So if the IHME forecast is right, we got a long way to go before we hit our peak. Hospital resources are projected actually to peak next week. And we're going to get into the next part of this conversation here, which is everybody really has got to be hoping for that, because the news out of Eastern Washington is really bad. This morning I wrote, I know things. I didn't realize how quickly I was going to be able to talk about I know things. We're going to be able to openly talk about it tonight. The hospital resource number, even though they're expected to peak next week, and by the way, when I say that, that's combined acute care and ICU. That also is hospital resources for COVID patients only. That doesn't account for like if we were to have a 7.0 earthquake, just putting it out there, right? If we had that right now, we'd be so screwed. We'd be like in the state that New Orleans is in. We'll peak for new cases, but it's not like this. It's like a flat line that just starts to go lower. There's another thing that is really concerning to me on that IHME forecast. The forecast says that for cases, we've probably about hit our peak. That's the other thing. Like send the good juju to the universe that that's true. And they actually predict the numbers will start going down next week for daily new cases. But when we get to November, that model is predicting the cases are going to go back up and like really go back up. It is predicting by the time we get to December 1, potentially 7,000 new cases a day. We're like 3,800, 4,000 right now. I really hope that model's wrong. I really do. Oh, by the way, if everybody in the state of Washington would just wear a flipping mask, we could save 1,000 people. And I get it. Not going to happen. But I'm just going to put it out there. Yeah, Rhonda, I'm flipping over to your comments right now because I've gone on it a long way here. Carla, it's not just about the freedom lovers wearing their seatbelts and the bike helmets. They take the eye drug. I'm not going to say the name because people report the stream, right? They take the eye drug, they take the zinc, they take the vitamin C, they do the colon cleanse, they do the juice, they do the Kagan water, they do all this bullshit. They just get sicker and sicker and sicker. And then when they're like, they go to walk to the bathroom and they pass out, or they're so exhausted from that act and they're just fighting for their breath. And then at that point, they're like, okay, let me call 911 for an ambulance, or their loved one's looking at them like, you're purple. And that's really not good. And they're showing up at hospitals as total train wrecks at that point, and their survivability is really low. And I'm just like, I'm so out of compassion. I'm so out of it at this point. I'm like, I don't understand. Right? Now you're going to go to the hospital, and now you're going to want every friggin' experimental treatment they got. You wouldn't get the vax, but you're going to demand RegenCon. You're going to demand monoclonal antibody treatment, which, by the way, is was developed using human fetal cells. Hypocrisy number one, and they are only emergency FDA approved. Hypocrisy number two. And for a lot of those people, when they get to that state and they're like, oh, can I get the monoclonal? And they're like, well, no. Because once you get that sick, the monoclonal antibody treatment can kill you. You're scaring people. We already linked to it up on our website in a story that explained everything about the RegenCon, and from the manufacturer's sheet that explains it really shouldn't be given to people if they've been symptomatic for 7 days, if they are increasingly ill, or if they need supplemental oxygen. Yes, they are. They are available on the peak, and they are working to try to make them more available. The challenge that you have is they have to be given intravenously right now. They have just been approved to be done subcutaneously in a series of 4 shots. This is going to sound really weird. This is the analogy that I'm going to use. If you've ever brought a pet, a dog or a cat, to the vet, and they're only like a little dehydrated, right? They're not to the point of like, we need to admit your pet dehydrated. A veterinarian sometimes, because there's a lot of fat right here on the dogs and cats, right between the center of the shoulder blades, they'll go ahead and inject a significant amount of saline in that area under their skin, and they'll have essentially a little hump, and that saline kind of gets absorbed by their body and helps them with dehydration. That's kind of what they do with the monoclonal antibody. No, they don't put it behind your back. I don't think they do. I don't know where they inject it, but you can do, it's 4 injections. Yikes. I'm not a fan of needles. It's 4 injections, subcutaneous, and then you go home. The benefit of having the approval to do it that way is it does not have to be done in a clinical setting. If you're doing an IV, it needs to be done in a clinical setting. If you're doing subcutaneous, it could be done at a pharmacy, right? You just need to have somebody who is capable of essentially doing the injection and licensed to do that and having that training. And Washington State is trying to roll that out. It is a therapy that hasn't been used very heavily in this state. And straight up, it has been successful in Florida. It is credited with probably keeping 10,000 people out of the hospital. And then you could reverse engineer that math and go, it might have saved 1,000 lives. We have that. Texas has it also, Kimberly. It's in all 50 states, and Texas has implemented it there, and it is also helped. So, yeah, the worm paste. So let's kind of start getting into the really yucky part. I never thought I would get to this point. Like, if you told me, even when things were like we were in I don't know land in March and April of 2020, if you told me that I was like, okay, I'm going to be doing travel advisories in the state of Washington, telling people like, do not go to these places, I'm like, it's not going to get that bad. It's that bad. It's my recommendation, right? So you can call it my opinion, whatever. This is not anything from a state agency or Yakima County, Klickitat County, Benton County, Franklin County, Walla Walla County. If you have travel plans there, I'd cancel them. If you're like, hey, no, just no. And we're going to get into why momentarily. The next one is the state of Idaho. Idaho is in crisis standards of care right now in 2 regions. It is the Panhandle region and the North Central region. So think basically about the northern half of the state. They break their state up into hospital regions like we do in Washington. And we're going to get into that in a minute. The other 2 regions, Southeast and Treasure Valley, have already said, we're like this close to having to go to crisis standards of care. The number of cases in Idaho are just going up. Those 5 Washington counties I just listed off, and in addition, the state of Idaho. This isn't just about COVID. If you have a medical situation that requires hospitalization, car accident, break your leg on a hike, water skiing accident, there's still water skiing out there, heart attack, stroke, right? You have some unforeseen medical event. You may receive inadequate care. You may not receive care. They may make a decision to put you on comfort care, which gets into the ugly part, which is the hospital status in the state of Washington. The Washington State Department of Health reported there are 1,767 COVID patients in the state of Washington as of, you could say, essentially this morning. Now, remember, that's just COVID. So 22.5%, roughly, of all people in the hospital in the state of Washington are from a single medical condition, which is COVID. 1 in 3 people in the hospital, in the ICU, are there with COVID. We have 260 people on ventilators. The number was 268 yesterday. Yay, it went down, but no, that number did not go down for a good reason. And what has been happening is those numbers have been getting adjusted, and they have consistently been, like tomorrow, it is very likely those Thursday numbers will be adjusted, and they will be higher. New hospital admission rate is we are adding 188 new patients a day with COVID. That's just COVID. Now, I want people to really understand, because we're going to get into, we're going to get into the suck. And this is where I'm like, be informed, don't be afraid. It's not good. Hospitals around the state are not doing elective surgeries. Now, people hear elective surgery and they think, hernias, not strangulated hernias, hernias, facelifts, nose jobs, tonsillectomies. That's what people think. No, that's not what we're talking about when we say elective surgeries. Elective surgery is being defined as, will you die tomorrow if you don't get this surgery? That is not hyperbole. And that is what is going on. Now, somebody might light up this comments and go, I know a person when This is what's going on. Day surgeries are still continuing. They are also pushing the boundaries on what is a day surgery. So, for example, let's say you need an appendectomy, right? That's an emergency surgery. And they're not going to go, come back tomorrow, right? If they're like, okay, the sucker's going to burst, it's going to come out. Normally, you get an appendectomy, they may not necessarily keep you 24 hours, but they're going to keep you around long enough to make sure that you eat and you don't throw up and you poo and you pee, and then you're going to, You get an appendectomy right now, it's like as soon as they can push you in the friggin' wheelchair out the door with a handful of pain medication and antibiotics, that's what they're doing right now. So if you're like, that's not true, my buddy got eye surgery today. Yeah, because they can come in, they can get the eye surgery, and they can go home. It's the surgeries where somebody is going to need a hospital bed after a surgery, where they are now having to go, can we make this person wait? And the bar for wait again is like, okay, we know we scheduled this heart valve surgery for you and your heart's real leaky and, this is tiring you out and affecting your physical stamina and affecting your quality of life. And if we continue to push this off, really bad things are going to happen to you. Sorry, we're going to have to keep pushing this off. Yes, we know that we told you that after this abdominal injury you got, and we had to give you a colostomy bag so that your innards could heal, and we told you we're getting rid of your colostomy bag next week. Yeah, sorry, you're going to have to keep living with the colostomy bag. We'll get back to you and we could do that because these are surgeries that are going to take more than a day. This is the stuff that's being pushed off. That's what's going on right now. In today's briefing, Dr. Shaw, our Secretary of Health, tried, tried to spin it. I don't say spin it cynically, but he tried to put things as positively as he can. He said that balance loading at hospitals was challenging, his exact words. And he said, we were asking all healthcare partners to defer elective procedures. And they haven't mandated it, but they are kind of like, please. So it's really just coming down to if you need emergency surgery, you're going to die, or caring for COVID patients. In University of Washington medicine, in some cases where people are getting day surgeries, they're done with the surgery, and then they are in the operating room for an hour or more. They can't even get them into the PACU, which is post-anesthesia care. And then they may sit in the PACU, and that's where they're getting their care, because it is almost impossible to move them up into a hospital bed. This is current events where we're at right now. It's worse in Spokane. Peg Curie, the CEO of Providence Health, she used the words misery to describe the conditions in the ICU. She said the number of patients waiting for care in emergency rooms has skyrocketed, her word, and the transfer list remains long and challenging. Now, this is really important. We wrote about this yesterday. There is a coordination center which has been set up. There was an agreement set up in the state of Washington in the area hospitals. And this coordination center, which is located at Harborview Medical Center, coordinates when regional hospitals have run out of options. So let me give you an example. Providence Hospital, right? They're a big chain. They have hospitals all across Washington state. And so if you're at Providence, Spokane, and they've got a patient that's critical, it doesn't matter what it is, and they don't have an ICU bed for them, there's somebody at Providence goes, okay, I'm going to call Providence Everett. Hey, we've got a, right? Nope, can't do it. All right, I'm going to call, right? They're going to run down the list and call. They're going to call Mercy. That's the other hospital in Spokane. I know they're partnered with Mercy. They'll call Mercy. Hey, could you take them? Once they've exhausted all that, then they contact Harborview. And I go, okay, I got this patient. I got to put them somewhere, right? I got nowhere to put them. And then it's people in Harborview that are making, the 20, 30 phone calls that are trying to put the patient where things are at. Now, Dr. Shaw today referred to this as challenging. Peg Curie, CEO of Providence Hospital, said, use long and challenging to accommodate. And then she said, and I quote, you see these lists of people who want care from your hospital, and you have to make them wait. This is heartbreaking. Providence has formed patient placement committees to triage patients at the most risk for a higher level of care and decide what smaller hospitals can handle. That's a lot of fancy words for we're starting to ration care. But in Yakima, it's worse. It's a lot worse. Yakima Memorial Valley Hospital today is just said, we're rationing care. And they're also saying that they are low on oxygen and at the risk of running out of oxygen at the hospital. They are saying that about 10% of the patients now that show up in their emergency room are leaving because they're waiting for hours and hours and hours. And nobody is seeing them. The demand for oxygen in their hospital in one unit reached a level because they had to. It was brought to the point of the metaphorical straw that breaks the camel's back. They had to turn the oxygen up for one patient. That brought the whole unit above the level that is designed for oxygen delivery. The danger of this is that the lines, the plumbing that delivers oxygen, when it exceeds its design specification, can ice up. It can freeze. And if it ices up and freezes, the hospital, then all of those patients now have their oxygen cut off. That's where things are at in Yakima tonight. Dr. Marty Brugman of the same hospital, and I'm going to give these exact words. We are moving closer to crisis standards of care. And I'm going to continue to read this next quote. They may decide that we don't have the resources to care for you and your chance of survival is low. So we're not going to ask if you want to resuscitate or not. We're just not going to be able to do it. Now, what's happening? And this gets into, I know things. Our capacity to essentially play Tetris with patients is getting increasingly difficult. And it isn't just COVID patients. Because I know there's all those RSV. Yes, there's RSV. And quite frankly, there is the gun violence and the just general violence that is going on because all that's taking up beds. And it's not just Seattle, it's King County. And it's not just King County, it's Pierce County, it's Snohomish County. People are batshit crazy right now and are just brutalizing each other with ruthless aplomb. And so, quite frankly, in our emergency rooms, it's not just COVID, it's not just RSV, it's not just the everyday I fell off a ladder, I'm having a heart attack, I'm having a stroke. In places like Harborview, you've got the unhomed person that ate 9-volt batteries and now doesn't feel well. And I'm not saying that is a specific case, but I'm actually referencing a TikTok video that I saw. That is where the person's like, I haven't eaten in 3 days and I got diarrhea. And it was like, I know for a fact that you have eaten today because you ate 8 batteries. And diarrhea is what we're hoping for, so you don't have to have surgery. And then you have the gunshots and the stabbings and the beatings. And so it's all of it. It's all of it. And our hospital system is on the brink of breaking apart. And I know there's going to, this hospital is, yes. The reason that some small rural hospitals may have empty beds is, one, if you have a bed, but there isn't a doctor or a nurse for the bed, then all you have is a bed. You have all the beds you want, but you need doctors and nurses to staff the bed. That's number one. The second thing is, particularly small rural hospitals, they're not set up for gunshots, stabbings. We got to put this person on a ventilator. We got to do we got to remove someone's gallbladder because they have, they're having a wicked gallstone attack. They're not set up for that. The hospital system has changed. Thank you, Richard Nixon. So that it is essentially think like an airport. It's like hub and spokes. So the small rural hospitals kind of take I got in a car accident and the airbag went off. I got a broken wrist and I got a broken leg. I don't need massive orthopedic surgery. I got a concussion. I need to be watched in the hospital for a few days. Probably going to have to get out of here and go see an orthopedic for my wrist. That's what those hospitals are set up for. Or for oh my God, I have appendicitis. That's what they're set up for. They are not set up for critical care patients like COVID, RSV, hardcore pneumonias, and all this accident stuff. Well, it's empty because of the vaccine mandates. They're firing all the nurses and doctors. 88% of nurses are vaccinated. We have receipts for that statistic. 96% of doctors are vaccinated. When we look at, say, what happened at Peace Health, they passed a vaccination mandate. Less than 5% of the staff, and not all of that staff is gone. Some of them are still having their claims for medical or religious exemptions examined. Memorial Hospital System, is it Memorial? Don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to Memorial. Hospital system in Houston, 26,000 employees. Over 99.6% got vaccinated. And by the way, the mandate at a state or a federal level isn't even here. So that's not the issue. The other thing that is going on is that the pay for nurses and the treatment of nurses and their patient load, this has been going on for years, and they have been complaining about this for years. And what's been happening is nurses, particularly on the COVID wards, people are coming in as traveling nurses. And then you're a traveling nurse. Yeah, I travel. So what goes on? Well, I work 4 weeks, and I don't work 4 weeks. So you work for a month. Yeah, I work for a month. I work about 70 hours, right? Because they know the hours and stuff. How much you make? I'm making $8,000 a week. Plus, they're paying for all my meals and my hotel room. And they're telling a nurse that's making $70,000 a year with forced overtime, crazy patient loads. They're quitting. They're quitting by the thousands. Capitalism. Isn't capitalism amazing? And then the other thing is you have people that from the trauma, the post-traumatic stress, they're like, I'm out. I'm just out. I'm not doing this anymore. And if they can retire, they're just retiring. They're getting out. This is why, now you get this big long explanation. This is why I'm saying don't travel to the south central part of Washington. You may not, if you need hospitalization, you may not get hospitalization. Certainly not the hospitalization that you expect. Now, the Washington, let's talk about crisis standards of care, Washington State, and what happens, right? We have one hospital that's essentially sounded the alarm. There are a few other hospitals in Eastern Washington that they're not saying the quiet part out loud, but they're really hinting at it. The other thing is, if you go back to the statement that was made on the 8th, from the Department of Health website, if you listen to some of the questions and the things that were said today in the press conference, right, there's kind of this going on. Because the other thing when I'm talking about elective surgeries and pushing all of that off, about playing Tetris with patients, trying to move them anywhere we can, to say to the states of Alaska and Idaho, we are under no obligation to take out-of-state patients. This was said multiple times by the Washington State Hospital Association yesterday. They literally said those words multiple, because Alaska is really bad. Alaska is not far behind Idaho right now. You can read our report on what's going on in Alaska, right? Because you don't hear a lot about what's going on. It's really bad up there. The state has an agreement that they will not let a single hospital go into crisis care. You have other states, like in Texas, you had multiple hospitals in El Paso that had to go to crisis standards of care. There was a hospital in Wyoming last week had to go to crisis standards of care. What the state would do if we have to go to crisis standards of care is they would move an entire hospital region or the entire state into crisis standards of care. There are, I believe, 8 hospital regions. The only region that is its own county island is King County. That's the central region, and it's its own little island. Pierce County is kind of in a sliver of counties that run from Pierce County west all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Snohomish County is in a slice that kind of runs a little bit into the Olympic Peninsula and goes further north, but not all the way to the Canada border. So if we get into that, Yakima, because we've talked about this hospital in Yakima that has now raised its hand and said, we're running out of oxygen and we're running out of options. We got people walking out the door because we can't treat them. And they're saying out loud, crisis standards of care. If the state were to make a decision, it would be a very similar decision to what happened to Idaho. They would move the South Central Hospital region. I am not saying that region is going to crisis standards of care. I'm explaining to you, if they get to the point, what that would look like. So the decision could be they would move the South Central Hospital region there. That includes those counties again: Yakima County, Klickitat County, Benton, Franklin, and Walla Walla County. My compassion is so low. My compassion is so friggin' low here, because Benton and Franklin County numbers have been atrocious basically through this whole friggin' thing. This was preventable. This is, as we would say in baseball, a forced error, and it is what it is. So what do we have left, right? Are we out of chess pieces? No, we're not. We can ask for FEMA strike teams. Idaho asked for FEMA strike teams. It wasn't enough. I know Mississippi asked them, and it kept them just like right on the line. I know Mississippi got some. Oregon has strike teams in there. It kept them from crossing the line. So we could ask for federal FEMA strike teams. National Guard, because this came up, we could, would we deploy the National Guard? Here's the problem. When you deploy the National Guard with doctors and nurses, if they're not like active duty military and they're a doctor or a nurse, guess what their day job probably is? Their day job is probably being a doctor or a nurse. And so there isn't a whole lot of option to go to the National Guard. I just saw a comment about field hospitals. There are multiple hospitals in Washington that have already set up tents. There's tents in Olympia. There's tents in Tacoma. There's tents in Vancouver. We're already there. We're 2 tents. We're already triaging patients in tents. That ship has sailed. We have Cowlitz County. That was the first red flag for me, where it's like, oh, this is not good. Cowlitz County asking for a mobile morgue. So we could ask for federal strike teams. We certainly could ask for traveling nurses to come into the state and traveling doctors. We have money that came from the CARES Act that we could spend for that. We could, but of course that's a double-edged sword because then you have people like, especially in these rural central Washington hospitals where some nurse might be making $60,000 a year and they're standing next to somebody that's going to make almost that $60,000 maybe in the 4 to 6 week rotation they have at that hospital. And it's just, this is part of capitalism. You got to love friggin' capitalism. Capitalism has no business at the hospital level. None. But that's the amazing country we live in. Yay. They'll continue to try to load balance patients to other hospitals. Right now, part of what they have in place is that the large regional hospitals, so you think of UW-Medicine, Harborview, Peace Health down in Vancouver, the Providence Hospital in Spokane. There's another one that escaped me. It's like 300 beds, and I can't think of what community is in Eastern Washington. These are these large regional hospitals. They already have agreement in place to go. We'll keep taking patients. So the line of last defense will be, we're sending patients to Seattle. Spokane really doesn't have any capacity left, right? So we're going to be sending patients to Seattle, or interestingly, like Vancouver down in Clark County, the last time we could see the individual data, they were actually in the best shape. And they're just going to start pushing people to those regions. Like, here they come. You're going to have to figure it out. They have that chess piece. If they run out of those chess pieces, then we move to crisis standards of care. The next 2 weeks is going to be really, really critical in this state. When you get to crisis standards of care, you get into what's so-called black tag triage. Now, the state of Washington has a whole plan. It's all written out. And quite frankly, I haven't read the plan. I did skim through what was set up for Iowa. Certain states have Iowa, Idaho. Certain states have different systems. There's a 4-tier system, a 5-tier system, a 7-tier system. It's all basically based on mass casualty events, battlefield medicine. But you wouldn't think we would get to this state for something we have a freaking vaccine for. But here we are. So what happens is a person comes in. The first thing is you could get green. And if you get green is basically like you're the walking wounded. That's, suck it up, buttercup. Here's an aspirin and go home. I say that metaphorically. But it literally, it could be, oh, you're bleeding. Here's a wad of 4x4s, direct pressure. We will try to get to you before tomorrow. That could be green. Yellow is this person needs more, but it can wait. So you might have, say, somebody with a broken leg that needs a reduction. So they may go, all right, this is going to hurt a lot. And they're going to do the reduction. And they're like, okay, and we're going to get back to you when we can. right? Because maybe they would do that reduction because they don't want circulation cut off in the lower extremity. If a person is red, what that means is this person needs emergent care. They're going to die if we don't give them care. But then there's one other thing in that criteria. If they're red, with the available resources we have left, if we dedicate our resources to this patient, we are doing the ethical and right thing in saving this patient with the limited amount of resources we have left. The last one is black, and I know what black is, and they call black expectant. And what expectant is we don't expect you to survive. And what they're looking at is if we take our limited resources that we have right now and we apply them to you, then we will not be ethically utilizing the limited resources we have left. Now, that doesn't mean that they leave something person gasping and writhing in pain. They move to what is called comfort care. Comfort care is you'll get oxygen, you will get pain medication, typically morphine, and that's what you're going to get. And if a person could be an expectant, and if resources become freed up, that person can be moved into a red category. And again, this doesn't go into just COVID patients. I'm not saying we're there. I'm explaining how this works. And that's how Idaho has it set up, right? They're on the 4 tier. There's other systems, 5 and 7. Obviously, we don't want to get there. Nobody in the medical profession wants to have to literally play God and decide who lives and dies. Now, this comes into the next question that I think is the 800-pound elephant in the room, which is if a person comes in and they are unvaccinated, then where are they in this chart? It's not as simple as, well, you're unvaccinated, you're going to the back of the line. It's not that simple. And quite frankly, as much as this may infuriate, it would be medically unethical to base it just on that decision. Now, if we're going to just say, we'll play what-ifism. You got 2 patients. They're both 50 years old. They're both male. They're both employed. They both have wife. They both have children. Because this is part of the equation. They have similar weight, similar height. They both smoked previously. They're overall, they're identical. We run down that list. They both got COVID. They're both have O2 sats in the 80s, low 80s. We're not going to get into the pedantry of what it is. They both have a raging fever. They both are showing signs of hypoxia. They both need a ventilator. There's one ventilator. That's when, are you vaxxed or not, will come into the equation. Because the unvaccinated person has a significantly less chance of surviving than the vaccinated person. And that's where, if you're unvaccinated, that can come into play. And again, people don't want to make these decisions. So, yeah, like Rhonda, you could call it kind of like hospice. Wow, Roger, expectant echo status. Morphine, that comfort care isn't back. Yeah, it's not good. Well, that's why I'm saying, I'm just saying if you're down to the scenario where we're down to one ventilator, the resources may not be a ventilator, just maybe we have one ICU bed left with nurses and doctors to staff it. So who's going to get the ICU bed? I know that there are hospitals right now that are doing split ventilators. What a split ventilator is they have 2 patients running off of one ventilator. I know there are hospitals in Washington State that are having to do that. We're not in a good. No, it won't. It won't. Who has the better insurance? We would want to believe that that is not in the equation. I really want to believe that's not in the equation. It would be interesting to go which insurance company approves the hospitalization first. It is that. Ooh, thank you. Thank you for that. So let's recap because I've talked a lot. I saw the thing about the interesting on the triage in Pacific Northwest. Documents available, by the way, in the Department of Health website if you want to go do some light reading. I did not say, because I did not say we're moving to crisis standards of care. I did not say the South Central region is moving to crisis standards of care. I outlined we still have pieces on the chessboard. We don't got a lot of moves. We're out of moves. And I will close this section going back to don't travel to Yakima, Cliticat, Benton, Franklin, and Wallowa counties. And I would include that as, well, I'm going to drive I-90 and, or I'm going to go, no. Or it's not I-90. It's the what is it? It's 87 or I can't remember what the highway number is. It heads down to Yakima. Just, you get in a car accident. You right now may not get adequate hospital care. This is the United States. This is 2021. And this is so infuriating because this was fully preventable. And I know the number of people, because I said it earlier, the number of people who are against, right, that number is shrinking, and I get it. I'm not going to sit here and browbeat. Just please. I'm not magnet. He's like there, it's stuck to his arm. I'm not freaking. Not magnetic. My cell reception doesn't get better when I hold it up to the side of my friggin' head. Point blank, my dick's not limp. Right now it is. I don't know what else to tell you. We'll talk about, we'll tap dance around because I don't want to say too much about it, but we'll tap dance around it. Please get vaxxed. Okay, subject of vaccination. I want to talk about, we got a lot to cover. I want to talk about vaccination and religious exemptions, right? Because there's a lot of people going, I'm going to play the religious exemption card. That may not work out for a lot of people the way that they think. So this is on our website. We published this today. So you can go up on the website. It's on the COVID update for the 9th. In researching, what religions are like, yeah, we're not down with the vaccines. I didn't go to a current article because it's real easy if I go to a current article. I go, well, that was custom tailored to scare people. So I looked for something that A, was older, pre-COVID, and B, came from, not like a news story, CNN or Fox, but came from like a university or, a school of theology or something. And I found one. Vanderbilt University Medical Center has a piece that they wrote all the way back in 2010 about religious exemptions. And here's the short answer. None of the major religions, and when I say major religions, I am not just talking like Christianity and all of its flavors, and you're only going to say Jews because you're a Jew and Muslims. No, I mean real broadly the major religions, nor their branches have an anti-vaccine doctrine. There are a few sects, fringe sects, that have an established theological objection to vaccinations. Dutch Reformed. I didn't know that, by the way, yesterday. Or earlier today. I don't even know what Dutch Reformed is, but apparently Dutch Reformed. And then there's several very, small niche religions that focus on faith healing. Faith Tabernacle, Church of the Firstborn, Faith Assembly, End Time Ministries. Now, in Islam and Judaism, Judaism. I'm getting my mouth dry. Judaism. Just let it go. Only the most strict adherents. And when I say strict, we're talking like ISIS-K Taliban strict for Islam. When I say Judaism, we're talking Orthodox Zionist, right? Super. They're on the West Bank. Are the rockets coming today? Hardcore. They will be against vaccine that uses gelatins that come from pork products, porcine gelatine. By the way, that's not in the COVID vaccination. So if you're listening to my voice right now, I go, okay, I'm converting to Islam and I'm going to, no, that one's not going to work because there is no porcine gelatine in the COVID vaccine. They are otherwise not against vaccinations. In both Islam and Judaism, there have been multiple statements of faith that are like porcine gelatine that is used in vaccinations is an inedible product, not something you can put in your mouth. So God's going to be cool with it. It's okay. All right. Additionally, the Church of Christ scientists, which is not Scientology, right? But I know in Edmonds, they have the Christian Science Reading Room. They are a strongly oriented on faith and prayer for healing. They do not have an official doctrine against Western medicine or vaccinations. Kind of their view is, like, oh, dude, you're really sick. It's not working. You should probably go see a doctor. All right. So here's the other one. I'm not mocking you, but if you applied for a religious exemption and you're like, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, you better just start working on your plan B now. Because a lot of people think Jehovah's Witnesses, no on the vaccines. Jehovah's Witnesses were no on the vaccines until 1952. It's a real common by the way, I thought it was actually, I knew they were okay with vaccines, but I didn't know it went all the way back to 1952. There was another trivia question I would have got wrong 8 hours ago. As a matter of fact, and we linked to that on our website, there's an article published back in 2021 where the group provides a list of general health recommendations. You could almost think of it as a condensed, modernized version of a lot of the code that is in Leviticus. And the code in Leviticus, if we go back to both the Jewish faith and the Old Testament, the Christian faith, if you read Leviticus and you look at it through a modern eye, Leviticus is just a health code. I mean, it's like, the easiest way to explain this, right? Don't eat pork, don't eat, hoofed mammals. They didn't know what trichinosis was. All they know is, hey, Abraham ate a pig and Abraham died horribly after eating the pig. That part they got, right? They got the cause part. They just didn't get the causation part. Same thing with shell. You can't eat shellfish. They didn't know red tide. Rebecca ate a bunch of clams, and then she died horribly. God is pissed. Don't eat clams. All right, no clams, no pork. Got it. Good. Red tide, tricking it literally. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. Another thing, Olivia, you're supposed to wash your hands 5 times a day. You count the time that average times the number of person goes to the bathroom in 24 hours. You probably should be washing your hands 5 times a day, right? It's a health code. Anyway, on there, they were like, yeah, vaccinations, they're part of it. So if you applied for a religious exemption or I applied for a religious exemption, I told them we're Jehovah's Witness, start working on your plan B because that's just going to be so anyway, that's on there. We just have it on there like, hey, we're trying to address that. Let's talk about the school roundup real quick. Bellevue School District went to yellow. They had 3 more schools add quarantines, and they breached our criteria for green. So our criteria for green was less than 10 confirmed COVID cases system-wide because 0 is impossible. We're probably never going to see 0. Let's save that conversation for another day. So they moved to yellow. Chinook has 10 people in quarantine. That's the one that's kind of like eek on there. Lake Washington, Thoreau Elementary was added today with 4 people in quarantine. And as far as I know, within the state of Washington, I believe the 81 students in quarantine at the middle school, I believe that is actually the largest situation in the at least in Western Washington. And then the reason Lake Washington School District we have red is there's an entire classroom shut down at Mark Twain Elementary. Our criteria for red is if entire classrooms are shut down, an entire school is shut down, the school district has gone to remote learning, or more than 10% of the student body have confirmed cases / quarantine, your status red. North Shore is yellow. North Shore's got a ton of cases. I'm not going to sit here and say they've got cases in every one of their schools, but they got a lot of cases. However, it's a lot of onesie twosies, right? And there's one here, there's 5 here, so they don't have entire classrooms shut down. They don't have schools shut down. They're nowhere near 10% of their entire student body in quarantine or with cases. So they're still status yellow there. Multiple school districts reported yesterday COVID cases in their schools and quarantine. Seattle, Federal Way, Puyallup, Linwood, Issaquah, all of them reporting things. Next board meeting for Lake Washington School District is on Monday at 7 p.m. If you are an advocate for masks, if you are an advocate for vaccinations, if you support our student body, you should plan to be on that council meeting. You know, now that I'm thinking about this out loud, because Monday is the 13th, to further encourage people to go to that meeting, I may bump happy hour to Tuesday on that day and not do it on Monday, and just have the call to action of please virtually attend this, the Lake Washington School District board meeting on there. Next bit of COVID news. God, there's so much COVID. Like, we haven't even gotten to the Biden announcement. Microsoft has announced that they are not reopening U.S. offices. That includes campus and facilities that are in Issaquah, Bellevue, and of course the main campus in Redmond. And they're like, we don't know when it'll open. It's indefinite. We don't know what's going on with the whole COVID thing. They had planned to reopen October 4. They pulled the plug on that, and there is no answer for that to go on when that will happen. They have joined Google in delaying opening, and Amazon. I think did Amazon push all the way to January? Some reason I think Amazon's still October, and I don't see it happening. Courtney, you're talking about in Kent. I see your comments there about there's so many cases. Is that in Kent? We have a contact there, and I will make a point to reach out to that person. The real job's super insanely busy. I don't know if I will be able to do that today. Let's talk about Biden administration and the announcements that happened today. There were several announcements that happened. All right. The first thing is the biggest one, the mandate for vaccinations for all federal employees and contractors to, I quote, to the extent consistent with applicable law. There are a bunch of Republican governors that are already saying, over my dead body, we're taking you to courts, blah, blah, blah. COVID approves. This impacts approximately 20 million people, this federal order. I'm like, wow, there's that many people, because it isn't just federal employees and contractors, and they're being mandated to get the vaccine. The other thing that's in there is it extends to people that are employed in Head Start Early Childhood and other federal education programs. That's about 300,000 people. It also extends to anybody that works in a medical facility that accepts Medicare or Medicaid. So that's the one. Here's the bigger one. They have directed OSHA which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, to set up a mandate that for any business in the United States that has more than 100 employees, they need to be vaccinated, or they're going to have to be tested once a week. The businesses will have to provide paid time for whether they're being tested or whether they go to get vaccinated. And then as part to support that, they announced that they are expanding the number of testing sites. They are working with multiple pharmacies to add testing sites there. And then one, which quite frankly I feel is total bullshit, is Walmart, Amazon, and Kroger will offer at-home tests at cost for 3 months for a savings of about 35% off of the current retail price. Yeah. Thanks for nothing, assholes. I'm going to be candid. I don't like it. I don't. It's probably going to shock some people. I don't like it. I get why. And I can look at the numbers, and because I'm a fan of the numbers and I love my facts. 75% people, adults, have at least had one jab. 90% of the U.S. active duty military is either fully vaxxers, and that goes back to August 9. 88% of nurses, 96% of doctors. And for areas that have done mandates, we're seeing anywhere from like 91 to almost 100% compliance. I'm not against it to the point that I'm like, I'm going to go and write an editorial why I think this is a really stupid idea. I think that for a subset of people that were on the fence, they're just going to dig in their heels because you're not the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do. It's a really complicated problem. Here's something I'm really frustrated. Let's say we weren't in our own COVID crisis in this state, right? Let's say everything was good. Our hospitals would still be in crisis because we'd have to be picking up the shit for Idaho, Alaska, and Oregon right now. They'd be sending all of their friggin' patients to us, and we would still be in the shit. And we've seen this. We saw this play out in Mississippi. We saw this play out in Alabama, right? Where these states all of a sudden had these big explosions. What's Mississippi and Alabama's we need help plan? We're going to send them to Texas. We're going to send them to Florida. And Texas and Florida is like, it's crazy. We can't do. You guys are going to have to figure it out. And now what's happening is we're seeing this in South Carolina and Indiana and growing in West Virginia and Kentucky, right? And Georgia, because they're like, oh, so where are we going to send them? States that had their act together through COVID have had to clean up the mess for states that haven't had their act together. Washington State, Western Washington, has had to clean up the mess for Eastern Washington for 18 months. And we're now reaching to the point that there's nothing left to clean up. And there's a subset of people that are, again, they're just going to be, it's not real. It's not happening. It's just, I don't know. Maybe they're going to get there. Maybe if they need to be convinced to have bodies laying in the parking lot of the hospital, I don't know. Maybe in a few weeks they're going to get their wish. Maybe they're going to get that friggin' reality check. And even those are actually crisis actors. They're great Hollywood props. Amazing, right? We get it. They're just going to keep making their friggin' excuses. But this feels like a really big stick. Can OSHA do this? Does OSHA have the authority to do this? Probably. I would say a lot of lawyers have been looking at this for months. I would even actually go as far to say that there were lawyers probably looking at this, meaning within the government, going back to the Trump administration and looking just, what are the plans? Not saying that, certainly not implying Trump or anybody there was going to do anything like this. But I am sure there are people that were doing due diligence. What are the legalities? Well, yeah, and they've already quoted the law and stuff. When you get into federal rules, you're no longer into Jacobson v. Massachusetts, because Jacobson v. Massachusetts, when you get to state, county, local employer mandates, that's like, because so many people have challenged that one. It's like, it's bulletproof. It was just challenged last month, and Amy Coney Barrett was like, I don't know, the rest of the Supreme Court doesn't have to see this. It's like, you got to go get vaxxed. Shut the hell up. So when a state or a county, unless there's already existing laws on the book, Oregon has this problem. there's like nothing. When you get into the federal, it gets a little more hinky. The other thing that I'm left scratching my head on, let me give you an example. Let's say I own Subway franchises. I would hate my life if I owned Subway franchises, but let's say I own Subway franchises. And let's say I've got 4 Subway franchises and I've got 70 employees among the 4. So, okay, I don't employ 100 people, right? Because I just have my franchises. But am I counted as a franchise, or am I looked upon as, well, you're Subway, so you have to, right? I think these are the sticky questions. If you're a company that hires contractors that work in other locations, right, then what happens there? I think that's another question that you have. I think the other thing that can OSHA do anything about SPOG? Rex, I'm glad that you're on. I would say, see, it's like I'm not a lawyer. This is an interesting question, right? SPOG is a union. The employer, well, SPOG is a union. I don't know. Do you work for the union, or are you a member of the union? You work for the police department? I don't know how that's set up with SPOG. I know, like, if you're a carpenter, you work for the union, and the union sends you to the job. It's interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, SPOG is already in a place, Rex, where this doesn't matter because they've already looked at the legalities of it, of the state mandate. I'm sure somebody who has a pay grade much higher than me and actually went to law school explained Jacobson versus Massachusetts and said, like, you're at a dead end. There's nothing you can do here. And so it is what it is. And also, Rex, while I'm answering that question, because I saw a question you asked, I think, on Twitter, we had announced back in, I'm going to sidebar everybody, we had announced way back in late May, like May 20th or May 30, maybe early June, that we weren't going to be doing the small protest coverage anymore because, one, the protests that were going on were leaving us scratching our heads going, so what were we trying to accomplish here? That was, number one. I've said it so many times. I support diversity of tactics. I get that there are people within this area that their diversity of tactics is breaking shit. I get it. Doesn't mean that I like it. Doesn't mean I approve of it. But I respect that is what they feel that they need to do. But with that said, they don't want anybody around showing what's going on. And then the second thing is with the issue that was going on here, it just left everybody. It left us. It left the audience. It left people in the Black Lives Matter community, which is separate from what was going on. That's really clear to understand. Just going like, what are they doing? What are they trying to do? Right. And so anyway, we decided, okay, that's it. Yeah, that's an understatement. I mean, generally, streamers are just persona non grata anyway. Yeah, Stephanie, they can't override OSHA, but again, I think it's a non-issue for SPOG because of they at first, right, when this was first announced, they were like, we're going to pursue our legal, I'm paraphrasing, right? And then, well, that went away because, again, I'm sure somebody explained Jacobson v. Massachusetts to them. And again, somebody that has lawyer next to their name, not some asshole on the internet like me. Let's see. I want to talk a little bit of good news. There's a little bit of good news. There's a little bit. Good news number one I want to talk about is down in Oregon. Oregon is entering the last phase of their surge, it looks like. It looks like their cases are topping out. It looks like hospitalizations are going down. Unfortunately, fatalities are the trailing indicator. And I'm like, well, that's not very good news. The good news is that Oregon got to the point of, say, rationing care. Certainly if you look what was going on, like in Josephine County, Malheur County, they were just right to the absolute line. But they didn't tip over. We're getting very, very close to where Oregon was maybe 14 days ago, right? The question is, do we tip over in the next couple of weeks. But Oregon is on the right trajectory. Good news out of Mississippi tonight. Mississippi closed their last tent hospital today. So they are in a place where their resources are very thin. Their staffing, their ICUs, but all of their numbers are going in the right direction in Mississippi. Part of the bad news there is that Delta is essentially running out of people to infect, but they are moving in the right direction there. I think another thing, California, right, in Los Angeles, they have passed this vaccine mandate for all students in public schools. School board voted for it. I think there's some more legal hoops they have to jump through to make that happen. You gotta get other vaccines to go to school, so not terribly surprised by this. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio on the other side of the country with the largest school district in the United States. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. Quote unquote, we just don't think that's the right thing to do. So spin it any way there that you want to. There's an interesting story out of Texas that came out today. And that is from the Houston Museum District's Child Care Center. Flavia Souza, I hope I got the last name right, is the director there. And they were able to accomplish something. Their entire staff is vaccinated. The parents of the kids that are, they're all vaccinated. And this wasn't an easy journey. We have the link. It's on our COVID update today. You can scroll down to Texas. We have the link. It's a long story, and I'm not going to get into it. This took months, but they didn't do it through incentives. They didn't do it through mandates. They did it through patience, listening, fighting misinformation, educating, and they were able to get everyone vaccinated. It's a feel-good story, and it's what you got to relish the wins, right? So it's an interesting story on how they got people to the finish line. Oh my God, InfoPig is on. Oh my God, I would see you forever. This is part of the reason why I'm not necessarily really thrilled with this. Companies of 100 or more need to get, you have to come up with a vaccination or testing plan. I do like the fact that it is a vaccination or testing plan. I do like that. I like the weekly testing. My concern on that, though, is we don't have enough test kits and labs and resources to test the people we need to test now. Like here in Washington State, the test center, like on Aurora, you try to book appointment there. It's booked. People are waiting 1-2 hours. There are people in Eastern Washington and there's people in Southwest Washington. They flat out can't get tested. They can't even find a test center. And the rapid tests, they're like 50-60% accurate. They're not great. So to me, it's like, all right, I get it. I like the testing thing. And where are we going to yank all these test kits out of thin air from? And the resources to run them. Someone stole your compost bin. One unvaccinated person in our org, but we only have 7 people. I would, let's see. For the big companies that I consult with, I'm thinking of the real job. Yeah, they all have, I would say that anybody I work with is probably vaccinated because they all have vaccine mandates. Maddie, that's good to know about testing appointments in South King County. When people have told me that they can't get tested, I always tell them, go to red areas. Go to areas where they vote red. You might be able to find tests. Same thing when people couldn't find vaccinations, back in April, May. It's like, oh my God, I can't get an appointment. I need to get a vaccination. I'm I went up to Marysville and practically walked in mid-April because, I got the word. Like, hey, you just go in there, you practically, and it was, boy, they weren't kidding. So I was actually up past like Smoky Point. I was almost all the way out of Marysville, and there wasn't a lot of people there. So that's an interesting angle. I'm liking the conversation, right? I like the OSHA thing. Yeah, I know. I question why we would have to, as a community, pay for testing of somebody once a week who doesn't vaccinate. Well, remember, not everybody can vaccinate. Remember that, right? And I get it. I get it, but not everybody can get vaccinated. There are people that do have legit religious exemptions. We kind of talked about that. It's not as many people as people think, but there are people that do. And we're based in a country that respects that. There are people that have legit medical reasons where they can't get vaccinated. There are people say and of course, then I know you get into the question, well, like, why are they outside in public? Well, we're reaching a point like this isn't going away. We're going to have to start living with it, and that's all there is to it. We're running really long, and I know I need to wrap this up. There was a lot to cover today. I want to talk about moo. Boo. No, I'm not talking. Oh, and I also wanted to talk about the little misinformation piece. I want to talk about moo, and then we'll talk about debunking misinformation. I wrote about this, but I don't want to talk about it tonight. There was a lot of press over the Labor Day weekend. You probably saw it. Moo's in 49 states. Moo is 39% of the cases in Colombia. Moo is vaccine resistant. Moo is killing people that they get it, right? You saw all these stories, right? Yeah, don't be losing sleep over moo. I'm going to explain to you why. When a new mutation of a virus emerges, it doesn't matter whatever virus is. It doesn't have to be COVID. Epidemiologists, doctors, professionals are going to go, if it does one of three things. One, does it make people sicker? That's number one. Number two, if there is a vaccination available for that, is it resistant or does it just go smoke you, right? I don't care about that. I'm walking through here. I'm walking here. The third thing, transmissibility. Does it transmit more? Now, let's talk about moo. Does moo make people sicker? Yes. Moo makes people sicker than Delta, and Delta makes people hella sick. Is it vaccine resistant or go vaccine? Yeah, watch this. Yes, it is vaccine resistant, and it appears to be more vaccine resistant than Delta. However, the Pfizer vaccine in particular seems to be pretty darn effective against moo. It's more the Moderna, the AstraZeneca, and the Johnson & Johnson one that moo gives trouble. Is it more transmissible? And the answer to that is no. And it's not even close. All those stories that came out this weekend, moo, and I'm seeing stories today, right? Like I saw stories some state, there's 44 cases of moo now in the big headline. This is why, you're scared of. I think I'm getting pretty brutally honest on some stuff. There was actually something I want to do in misinformation. I'm going to wait tomorrow, but I'll give you bonus content. We'll talk about this piece of misinformation too. And I'm going to label this one misinformation. Moo is already in decline globally. The number of moo cases, are already going down globally. They are 0.2% of all cases. In the United States, the state that is showing the most moo cases is Alaska. And they're about 4% of their cases there are moo. Here's the thing. Moo is not out replicating Delta, right? So when it comes down to who's having the most freaky-deaky sex with the cells, going here, replicate this, okay, right? Who's turning those cells into an efficient factory? It's not moo, it's Delta. So moo is not finding enough people to infect because Delta is like Delta House. Toga, 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 right? They're in the Deathmobile. If you're like Gen Z, you're like, what the hell is he talking about? Go look up Animal House. They were Delta House fraternity, right? They're in the Deathmobile. They've cut the cake. That's what Delta's going on. And, you know, Moo is like Niedermeyer, the ROTC cadet in the movie Animal House. Thinks he's really tough, but he's going to get run over and going to get fragged by his own troops in Vietnam. Moo's not, like, seriously. Don't worry about Moo. The other one that there was some press on was the C1.2, a C.1.2, which doesn't even get a longer designation or a name. This one was out of South Africa. And there was kind of like, oh my God, because it's like it's worse than Moo. And C1.2 is really just, you can't say that it totally ignores the vaccine, but they were seeing effectiveness down like as low as 39%, which of course is really concerning. And the same thing, the replication number on that is super low, and C.1.2 is going away. Lambda, let's talk about, right? Because Lambda has been this dominant strain in South America. Lambda is fading away, and it is being outbred. Delta is just, you know, Delta went to the all girls college, and you know they're getting wild in the big Lincoln, and they're outbreeding Lambda. It's the Delta show. So here's what you need to beat Delta. You need something that is going to be, one, more transmissible. That's one way it's going to beat Delta, and that's really hard because Delta is wickedly transmissible. The second way you beat Delta is you have something that just plows through the vaccines, right? It's super vaccine resistant, or the current battery of all the vaccines we have are ineffective. And then because the number of mutations globally are in decline, we're actually seeing less total mutations globally. The chances of that are declining as we see less. And here's the other thing. Viruses, when they mutate, if they mutate, let's say we get something that mutates and it's more transmissible and it's like to the vaccine. It needs to then have to have a third element to have us go, oh shit, which is it has to make you sicker than Delta. And just because it replicates better and hence it's more transmissible, and just because it is more vaccine resistant, and I'm not saying there's anything that cards the table that's like that, that doesn't mean it's going to make people sicker, right? We will get a different strain from Delta at some point because that's how this shit rolls. But that doesn't mean it'll be worse than Delta. We could get, you know, right? The next strain could be what the anti-vax people were hoping, or the people who are just denying this was a problem 19 months ago. It's just the flu. At some point, either our immune systems are going to get better through evolution, and that's going to take decades, or we're going to, Mal loves his movies. I do love my movies, Carla. Or we're going to get to a place where we'll get a mutation where it isn't as deadly. And then we get into a better place. And that's part of why I wrote, hey, we could get to endemic. I want to talk about two pieces of misinformation. First one I want to talk about is this study about ivermectin makes you sterile if you're a man. Why is like the little tiny journalist who just fell into this the one that's like telling the journalism community, y'all need to do better. You all really need to do better, right? Lots of headlines on this one, right? Study says ivermectin makes 85% of men who take it sterile. The plan is working perfectly. Let's talk about this study. Study was done out of Africa and Nigeria. It was specifically looking at the treatment of river blindness and the use of ivermectin, which that's actually ivermectin going back to 1988 when it was approved for human use. That's right. Ivermectin was originally approved only for animals back in 1981. I would love to start a rumor about it, but I will behave. Um, Ivermectin's roots, no pun intended, is literally from a bacteria that is only in the soil in Japan. It's actually a really fascinating story. Um, and so that's the roots of where, again, no pun intended, where it comes from. Originally animals only, moved to humans in 1988, specifically to address river blindness, and it does an amazing job of infecting it. River blindness, parasitic disease, you get it from fly bites, attacks your skin and the eyes, and you go blind. It's not good. It makes people really sick. People die. It was a huge problem in Africa. It's practically eliminated as a disease, which is a big part of the reason why the disease got the Nobel Prize in 2015. Nigeria, study there. They started with a group of 20,000 potential patients that they were going to observe. And what they were going to look at is A, river blindness, and then B, the before and after. We're going to have some fun with this. We're going to have fun with this story. Out of the 20,000 people they started with, they ended up with 37. Already there's a problem with this study because 37 people, it's barely statistically, like in statistics class, they teach you 32. I don't know why, by the way. I don't know where this number, it's like, I should have asked my college professor on that. Why 32? Like now I wonder who came up with it. 32 is considered the basement for statistical relevance. And of course, the more people you have, the better you have. Also, wasn't double blind. There's no placebo group and everything like that. The people, of course, had to have river blindness. The other thing is that they had to evaluate. I'm going to go so Beavis and Butthead here. They had to evaluate the performance of their sperm in order to be in the study. There's another thing that happened here. There were a lot of people that were disqualified from being in the study, which is why they only had 37 at the finish right to go into the study, because they already had problems with their sperm, either the motility or the quantity or the quality or the two heads, big heads, two tails. They already had problems. So they had to find what's going on here? What's going on? Whatever. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Back. What I was talking about. 37 people. That's it. They studied them for 11 months. These 37 people took ivermectin for the treatment of river blindness for 11 months. The doses they were given were based on their weight, and they were given pretty significant size dose, and it was a very long run. 11 months is a really long run to do this. So they get to the finish line, and what do they find? 85% of the people that are in this study got screwed up sperm, right? It not quality, it not quantity. It got big heads, it got two tails, it got two heads. They swim in circles. They do stupid stuff. And the other thing is that they were checking the quality of their sperm all through this 11-month period. So you got 37 dudes that were slapping it really hard, a lot, all in the name of science. Here's the problem that you have with this study. It's only 37 people, for one. The second thing is that the study wasn't looking at the efficacy of ivermectin for COVID. It was looking at the efficacy of ivermectin for river blindness. It was done over 11 months. It wasn't the animal formulation. It was the human formula because the formulations are different. That's part of the reason why they're like, you shouldn't take the animal one because that animal one's made for animals. The formulation is different. So, bottom line is it going to make them sterile? It's not like it's a junk study, but 37 people's not enough. It didn't focus really on the topic that was there. It wasn't a double blind. There's no placebo. group. And let's not forget, let's go back to the beginning of this, because there was more than 37 guys slapping it. You had a bunch of dudes at the beginning who were slapping it, and a lot of them already had messed up sperm to begin with. So you already have a problem with your data set right out of the gate, right? Because now you get into, well, wait a minute, did this cause this? Because there's already some environmental factor apparently in Nigeria with these men because of what is going on with them. So you've got that issue there. So anyway, yeah, don't be banking on it's making people sterile. That's the bottom line. The next thing I want to talk about, and this will be the last topic of the night. There is actually, well, second to last topic of the night, third to last topic of the night, because I'm kind of on something happy because we've talked. Well, I tried to make the ivermectin story funny. The next one I want to talk about is this graphene oxide, like because this is bubbling up again. Like it's like the troll farms and the Russian handlers on this stuff are like, okay, let's go back to graphene. We're going to go back to graphene oxide this week. And that's what I've noticed. I'm seeing a lot of this stuff on there. So first of all, we have a link on the story we did today on a super sciencey document about the characteristics of the compound. I would say you need a Rick Sanchez grade brain to read it. It hurt my brain. This document hurt my brain. It really did. This was like, oh my God, it's super sciencey. Here's a couple of things you need to know. Graphene oxide is normally in a powder form. That's its state. And in powder form, it's brown. We already got a problem here with the story. When it's suspended in a fluid, it's yellow. And it doesn't take a lot of graphene oxide to make it yellow. And don't forget, what's the claim? The vaccine is 99% graphene oxide, right? That's the claim. So if it was 99, this stuff is going to be looking like the color of super dehydrated pee or the iced tea that was in this bottle an hour ago. That's the problem number one. The next thing is that the viscosity of graphene oxide. At 90, right? Because what's graphene oxide's normal state? Solid. It's a powder. So if it's 99% graphene oxide, that means it's just solid. There's no fluid. It's solid. At 8% solution, and we connect to the super sciencey document that explains this. At 8% solution, graphene oxide has the viscosity of like axle grease or peanut butter. And we know that the COVID vaccine isn't that thick. So we know it's clear. And we know it doesn't have the consistency of peanut butter. And it's certainly not a solid, right? So we already have the problems there. But forget all that. Let's go to where this is coming from. That's the real issue, right? And this is maybe where you can help people and arm them with knowledge. A prestigious doctor found it. The doctor behind this graphene oxide conspiracy theory, misinformation, is Dr. Robert O. Young. By the way, Dr. Robert O. Young, as recently as August 27 on a news site, it's made to look like a new, and I don't mean like Malcontent news site. You look at the site, it kind of looks like a GeoCities site that's been modernized to 2015 standards. But anyway, he has graphene oxide, aluminum, and blah, blah, blah in there. So he's still doing this stuff. Let's talk about the credentials of Dr. Robert O. Young, because there's a problem here. Dr. Robert O. Young is not a doctor. He's a PhD. No. He doesn't have his PhD. He doesn't have a master's. He doesn't have a baccalaureate. He doesn't have an undergrad. He doesn't have an associate's degree. He doesn't even have a vocational certification. This guy did not even go to a for-profit college to learn to be a phlebotomist. He has a high school diploma. Nothing else. How do we know that? That's not true. He went to... Robert Young, we're not going to call him doctor anymore. Robert Young has been arrested 3 times in 3 different states from 1995 to 2014 for practicing medicine without a license. The first brush with the law was in Arizona in 1995. He pled guilty, but he pled guilty to a lesser charge to avoid the to a misdemeanor, avoiding the felony practicing without a license. He then was arrested again in Utah. Interestingly, the jury in that case deadlocked in that case, despite the fact they presented the fact he only had a high school education. But I will steal in the realm of facts. The jury deadlocked 8-4, and that was the end of that. In 2014, in the state of California, he was arrested again for felony practicing without a license. He pled guilty to those charges in 2017. As part of his guilty plea, Mr. Young, not Dr. Young, who got 44 months in jail, and we're going to get into the consequences of what happened with that. As part of it, he had to add to this in a statement that he has no post-high school educational degrees from any accredited schools. He also had to state in that plea deal, he is not and has never been nor has ever been trained to be a microbiologist, a medical doctor, a hematologist, a naturopathic doctor, or a trained scientist. Now, Mr. Young is a grifter. Well, that's a strong accusation there, mister. How do you know he's a grifter? He wrote a book called The pH Miracle. And it was at one point a bestseller on Barnes & Noble. He was one of these people with alkaline. You need to be alkaline. All your health problems would be solved with alkaline. You could, no, well, fine, he wrote a book. He said people write bullshit books all the time and sell them. Oh, no, it gets a lot worse. He had pH Miracle retreats. And they would cost you between $1,300 and $2,500 a night to attend these pH Miracle treats, where he would give you herbs and juices and convince you that you don't need to see doctors or Western medicine in any way, shape, or form. I have the answers. And this case in 2014 killed people. He literally killed people. And this is why he went to jail for 44 months. He was sued by the survivors of a cancer patient that died for $105 million, and he lost that suit in 2018. So anybody who goes, they're a prestigious doctor, they're respected, this guy's a grifter, right? And so then, well, what's in it for him? He's doing what's in it for him? He wants to sell you his cure. That's what's in it for him. And so we have all of this on the website. We have all the receipts. We have all the links. It's up on the story that we have up there today. And so you can go up there and see Robert Young. That you have up on there. Rex, the thing I'm disappointed with Joe Rogan, I see your comment about sounds like Joe Rogan. The thing that I'm disappointed about with Joe Rogan, and I call out the media coverage on this one too. If you'd never watched Joe Rogan's Instagram, the video, you'd have never known that he got monoclonal antibodies. You'd have never known it. In his video that he had up on Instagram when he explained, I got COVID and this is what I did, the first thing he had on his list was, I got monoclonal antibodies. Like, ivermectin was like 4th on his list. And yeah, see, now you can get into causation. And this has always been my argument. Well, I took ivermectin and I got better, and see, it works. I was like, well, you could have eaten a bag of Oreos and gotten better. And I could just give everybody bags of Oreos. And because, 80%-ish of people that get COVID and get symptomatic generally aren't going to walk into an emergency room. I could then argue that Oreos are the miracle cure for COVID, which of course they're not. And I'm so exhausted about talking about ivermectin. I'm so exhausted about it. This whole thing with Rogan, quite frankly, the media caused part of that because they just led with, he's taking ivermectin. They didn't lead with, among other things, including monoclonal antibodies, he also took out. If they had led that way, this whole Joe Rogan story would be totally different. And Joe Rogan wouldn't be in the defensive position, essentially arguing now with the likes of CNN. Look, I called out New York Times yesterday because I think their headline for the story about Amazon and the letter that Elizabeth Warren wrote, I think the New York Times headline was complete bullshit, right? It was a total bullshit headline. It was inflammatory. It was clickbait. This is the friggin' New York Times. This stuff doesn't help. This doesn't open channels of dialogue, right? It just makes people dig in their heels more. And so I'm a doctor of dudology. I love it. Everyone's got their doctor's name. I'm Dr. Zoidberg. I'm Dr. Zoidberg. Well, I tell you how we solve this. We'll put you in a centrifuge. This is how we get it out of your body. Won't that break all my bones? The bones. I always forget the bones. It's okay. I'll just cut it off. It'll grow back. Well, aren't you like me? No. Oh, then we won't cut it off. I'm Dr. Zoidberg. Welcome to the Dr. Zoidberg Show. I'm Dr. Zoidberg. A couple other little things I want to talk. I want to talk about one more gross topic, and then we'll figure out something to we'll talk about that's fun at the end. I want to talk a little bit about Louisiana. This is I don't know a whole lot about this story, but I know enough about this story to go, fuck me. One of the terrible things that happened in Katrina, there's a lot of terrible things that happened in Katrina, but one of the terrible things that happened in Katrina is vulnerable, sick, elderly people were abandoned. They were abandoned in assisted living facilities. They were abandoned in residential facilities. They were abandoned in nursing homes. They're just flat out abandoned. The state of Louisiana put in allegedly like a bunch of rules and stuff to go, okay, this won't happen again, right? We had Ida come in, and let's remember, within the urban center of New Orleans, there's very little flooding. There were areas that had devastating flooding and devastating wind damage, but there's nothing at the scope that we saw in Katrina. And a bunch of people that live in assisted living, residential, were abandoned. Again, 16 years later to the frickin' day. And there were hundreds of people that were brought to a warehouse without air conditioning or anything. These are vulnerable, old people with medical conditions that also with COVID have no business being in these conditions. A lot of these people were under the care of the archdiocese, the friggin' Catholic Church. And they were all but abandoned in a warehouse to the point that they were calling 911 themselves. Kind of going like, there's a person next to me and they needed insulin and they haven't got their insulin and they just died. I really don't know what to do at this point, but you need to do something. There were people that were calling up 911 to say, I have been kidnapped. They are not feeding me. They are not letting me go to the bathroom. They're not telling me anything. I am laying here in my own filth. I have been kidnapped. And officials took days to get to that warehouse. And when they got to that warehouse, they were like holy ass crackers. And so far, it's 12 people. There were hundreds of people in a fucking warehouse. Our elders. This is something I hate about American society. This is almost unique to American society. We treat people when they hit 65 like they are just friggin' disposable. There are other culture, but there's not many on the planet that are like this. It's pretty damn close to our country. This is how we treat our elders. This is how the Catholic Church treated elders in Louisiana. So, one, this is on the Catholic Church. Two, this is on the greedy bastards, because we shared. I shared this when going on with Ida. Like, here are the rules. Here's the document. Here's the plans. This is on the state of Louisiana for not enforcing the plans, but the state of Louisiana is known for being corrupt top to bottom, and really nothing changed in the 16 years that was there, and nothing will change after that. I'll tell you, if I were, 70 years old and I needed to be, in residential care, assisted living, an independent, right? Because independent, it's independent living. That was one of the arguments the Catholic Church made. Well, it's independent living. They were independent. So, they're independent. And so like officials were like, you left people who are in wheelchairs on the 4th floor with no electricity and no operating elevators. So how exactly is that independent? And you just left them. Again, if I were like 70, I had a loved one in 70, I would just be like, hey, Gammy Grandpa, let's get you some other state that gives a fuck. I grew up here. Let's get you to some other state that actually gives a fuck. It's horrible. And the other thing is that story's not getting the coverage that it deserves. It's not. We're not hearing a whole lot out of Louisiana in this. The other thing is that I'm concerned about. That was an STNG. Mama KDM, they had that? I would thought, they did a Logan's Run thing. That's interesting. Life Day, Capricorn 39, Renew. That movie freaked me out as a kid. I was like a little tiny kid when I said, there's a movie that a little kid had no business seeing. It's just terrible friggin' story. And it's just not getting the coverage that it deserves. And I think part of the issue that we have is there are so many natural disasters and things that are going on all at the same time. Star Trek: The Next Generation, Dora. Yeah, and Sidewalk Connoisseur, that is one of my concerns, and that's what I'm going to close with. On our COVID update, we haven't been putting Louisiana in now because it's just a black hole. People can't get tested. We know hospitalization numbers are going way down. We do know that there in Louisiana. What we don't know is, are there people don't have phone? Are they just suffering in silence? Let's try and look at this glass half full. Right now, in a lot of areas, we have a lot of people that are socially distancing, right? These areas that don't have power, the only places that they're coming together, gasoline, but a lot of these lines and stuff are outside. And we know that if you're in an outside environment, it's not as bad, certainly if you're in an inside environment. So, but there is a lot of concerns that Louisiana is going to see a second kaboom. Because we're going to know in another week or two if we're going to see, yeah, exactly. There's like no test data. That's why we're not even looking at it. because there's no test data that is there's no meaningful test data coming out of Louisiana right now. Oh my goodness, I have to end on something. You know, I don't have a video. I would talk about Poe. I'll talk about Poe while I'm looking for something that I can talk about. Maybe that that I can talk about, which is good. On TikTok, which is a vile cesspool of a platform, to be real honest. What I find is like I might find like every 20 videos, I'm like, oh my God, it's a good video. I'm going to watch that. There's a couple. I'm under the impression they're in Washington State. They were on a hike. I'm 99% sure they're in Washington State. They were on a hike, and just by chance, they found a tiny, tiny possum, like really tiny, that had fallen off of its mother probably and was wet and like literally on the brink of death, you know, tiny. And they got it. They brought it home. They made a little TikTok video, and they're like, we don't know what to do. We've called some rescues, and they're like, you know, help. You know, we're trying to give it some food. You know, like they went and got, I can't remember what they got. They went to a pet store or something they got. And so, like they made a video like 1 or 2 days later, or like, okay, we got so much help from like people that know about possums who like told us like, you know, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. So they went out and they did all that stuff. And they had another video, and Poe was looking a lot better. They hadn't named Poe at the time yet. And then there was another video where Poe actually was looking really good, right? Poe's eyes were open. Poe was showing more activity. Poe was kind of like, oh, yes, you can please. Yeah, yes, let me. And they were told like, oh, no, Poe can't sleep alone. They need to have a stuffed animal because Poe would just be clinging to, you know, their mother in that state. They had a video yesterday. They hadn't done a video in a while. They had a video yesterday. Poe is like 150 grams. I don't know. I can't do the math in my head. But anyway, Poe's like 150 grams and like super active and super cute. Possums are weird. They're like cute and ugly all at the same time. And Poe just is like, oh yes, you know, like wants to cuddle with them. It's so friggin' adorable. Yes, they were having to do eyedropper feeding. Poe was going to die. That's why I didn't leave it. Poe's mother was long gone. Like Poe was like in like the edge of a stream or a river. I'm seeing why didn't they leave it? Poe was abandoned, so that's why they didn't leave it. Like I saw the video where they found it. You know, Poe practically looked like kind of like a drowned rat when they found Poe. Anyway, it's really, really cute. Interesting other things that I've learned in following the journey of Poe. Possums can be litter box trained. They've already litter box trained Poe. They actually very, very early on had no idea. Took them like 5 minutes to like. They were like, we set up a litter box because that's what we were told to do, and like 5 minutes later went into it and peed. And like the little thing is litter box trained, and apparently, yes, they're wild animals and all. But apparently they can actually make decent pets. And the other thing they said is that Poe is an Instagram page. Kyra, thank you for drop the link. Kyra, can you drop the link? Drop the link in the chat. Oh my God, Poe, drop the link for everybody's. I'm like talking about Poe and right, and I you know, and I'm all I'm doing is talking. It's not like I can queue up a video for it. Let's see. All right, let's see if we can find like Florida person story. Did you all see this? Oh, I know. This is a good story. Let's talk about Janine. Can we talk about Janine? Janine. Ooh, that would be a great children's book. Oh, Ursinate is terrible. That's terrible. Don't. There you go. Poe Possum on Instagram. Poe is adorable. It's so cool. Let's talk about Janine. We'll end up with G because Janine's like great story, right? If you're not familiar with who Janine is, there's a video that came out over the weekend that was filmed in Nebraska. Janine felt very compelled to harass people in Lincoln, Nebraska, in a grocery store over the fact that they are wearing masks, which, by the way, in Lincoln, Nebraska, is mandated that you're supposed to wear masks there. And for whatever reason, Janine targeted a mother and their 13-year-old, and the 13-year-old started filming Janine. And Janine did things that in other states and other cities got people arrested. She was coughing on food, coughing on them. You know, it was like, oh, I have allergy. Coming through, I have allergies, and other people were trying to intervene. Like cut it out. And she played all of the cards, called them sheep. I'm healthy, maybe I'm not. She did it all. And her video went viral. And the thing, if you haven't seen, there you go. Thank you so much, Amara, for sharing the link. We have the video. The video is on our story yesterday. So you can go to the COVID update for September 8th. So we have that story up there. We're going to close the show with this because it's 11 o'clock. She was made internet famous real quick. I think the video originally went up on Instagram, then it went on Reddit, and then that Dane guy who we worked with on the story about Bonaventure, he picked it up. And as evil and disgusting and because TikTok really is a terrible platform, there's some goodness that comes out of there. And there were several creators that are like, and that Dane guy led this, like, we need to make her famous. Right? Who is this? And she was very bold about, see you next Tuesday. Yes. She was very bold about being filmed. She clearly didn't care about being filmed. And I think the thing, if you watch that video, right, she has that smirk where you're just like, I want to slap that smirk off of your face so bad. I would just love to see you eat pepper spray right now and watch that smirk disappear. But of course, none of this happened. Anyway, people figured out who she was really fast. And it turns out that Janine works for, or well, I guess the punchline is worked for SAP. She has her Juris Doctorate. Not a lawyer, but she had just got her juris. She's not bar certified attorney, but had studied and completed her JD in 2016. On her LinkedIn profile before she made it disappear, claims she's a Air Force Academy grad, so ex-military, I guess. And not easy to get the Air Force Academy, and SAP. Yesterday morning was like in a tweet, yeah, we're aware of this and we're looking into it. And then by the end of the day, they were like, hey, no longer with the company. And Janine's made all of her social profiles go away. People have called in to the Lincoln Police Department, reporters and stuff. Are you pursuing charges? Some of those were forces, of course not. And the other thing, it appears that the mask mandate in that county in Nebraska is like our mask mandates. There's no legal teeth behind it. And the employees at the grocery store did try, like, ma'am, you gotta, but, the general advice that is given at this point, because people have been literally shot over asking people to wear a mask, is, ask and then let it go. She looks like Marge Tater Green. Oh, there's one more thing I want to talk about. There's one more like good news story. So I don't know if you're aware of this. Matt Gaetz was in Washington State on Saturday. Yes, that Matt Gaetz. He was here to pimp for Joe Kent, who is a Trump-endorsed candidate who is running for the third congressional district. Anyway, Matt Gaetz coming out here. He gonna pump it hard for Joe Kent. And I saw all the stuff. Yeah, Roger, exactly. That's why people are like, they're not going to charge her with anything. But there's lots of people that are like, This is like straight up assault by Nebraska law and all, but they're not going to do anything. So anyway, Butthead from Beavis and Butthead is here. Beavis, which would be Large Marge. Large Marge has abandoned Matt. They're not campaigning together anymore because somebody apparently explained to MTG that she was losing a shit ton of money by hanging out with Matt Gaetz. When you become so radioactive, you are too radioactive for Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is like tells you everything you need to know about Joe Kent. I said, yeah, this is Matt Gaetz. I'd love to come out. Yeah, come on out and campaign for me. Because my QAnon Save the Children followers are really going to appreciate the child trafficking son of a bitch that you are, allegedly. So, anyway, there's videos of Matt Gaetz at the Clark County Fairgrounds. Maybe 150 people total. That's number one. Maybe. Tell them Large Marge sent you. I have people are going to walk away from tonight's show and start referring to MTG as Large Marge. There's maybe like 150 people there. That's number one. They did we'll put them in a semicircle to do the log thing, but it's not a lot of people deep. He's in a dirt parking lot. There's no podium. There's no sign. There's no backdrop. I mean, this is worse than Four Seasons landscaping. I just realized that. This was a worse shit show than the Four Seasons landscaping thing. Like Joe Kent couldn't even go. Joe Kent couldn't even go to like a Minuteman Press and drop $80 for an 8-foot banner. He's standing on a friggin' trailer like you would tow behind a pickup truck, and not even a nice trailer. And the sound system is so bad. It's like he's talking into a Mr. Microphone. I think he talked for like 10 minutes. It was like, I'm out of here. I'm like, this is where Matt Gaetz' life is at now. Matt Gaetz is pimping for a Trump-endorsed candidate in Western Washington, so you know where that's going to go. And I get there's very chuddy areas of Western Washington, but it's like, this guy Joe Kent's got no friggin' chance, right? He's pimping for this chuddy candidate in the 3rd District in a dirt parking lot at the Clark County Fairgrounds on the back of a fucking trailer. This guy's got friggin'... Remember, this guy is so radioactive that Newsmax was like, we don't want you on the show. I mean, well, does anyone know? Like, I can't watch OAN. My IQ will drop. Does OAN take his phone calls? Like, who takes his phone calls? Because MTG, right, is like, yeah. Is there anyone else that takes this call? Because Newsmax won't, Fox won't, right? Don't forget, like Tucker Carlson. Right? Remember the whole Tucker Carlson? Where he was like, "You remember Tucker? We were with that, right? Right?" And like, I see you're trying to implicate Tucker Carlson in your child sex trafficking on national TV. And Tucker Carlson's look on his face is like, "What the hell are you talking about?" So Joy, there is a you have a question from Rex off topic, but does Mal think the Proud Boys event coming 2 Saturdays similarly with more of the same reason? Okay, I'll answer that one, and I think we'll close on that. Thank you for the heads up on the question. No, well, if they're showing up at Skyview, they're gonna put the police chief in Vancouver and potentially Clark County Sheriff in a difficult position based on the court injunction that is there. Of course, if they ignore the court injunction, they're just going to embolden them to be more, to do more. If they arrest them, they're going to embolden them to do more. And then, like, the Angus Lee letter, we have that linked up. Well, actually, we have it on our Facebook and we have it on our Twitter. Damn. See, I want to end unhappy. I'm not going to talk about that. You go look on our Twitter. You go read it. That's all I'm going to say. The Proud Boys are going to be out for blood. You know, what's interesting to me is, like, you know, they're doing something on the 18th, which is interesting, right? Because Washington, D.C., you know, so I think one of the things that we're going to get educated on, because I saw they have something on the 18th. So in the local scene, we're going to get educated on who's the hardcore, and who's kind of more the fringy, because the hardcore won't be in the Pacific Northwest. The hardcore will be going to Washington, D.C. What'll be left out here is the B team. So, yeah, I think they're going to be, you know, yeah, Tiny got shot. They're going to be looking for whoop ass. Did Antifa shoot Tiny? Yeah, it's not even, you know, first of all, what's Antifa? And you have all that other questions that's in the first place. You know, it's not even clear, right? The police don't have a suspect. The person allegedly was trying to board a bus to get away. The bus never left. We know that from, so, like, where did the person, like, there's so many friggin', like, the whole thing is sketch. And it's a little weird that you had, like, 5-8 chud journalists around. They're streamers, they're journalists. This is the guy who's defended Katie Davis court. They're journalists. You know, and nobody saw anything, which is pretty freaking amazing. So, yeah, they're going to be out for blood. You know, the question is anybody going to be around to challenge them? Because there's kind of like this whole, I don't give a, you know what. And then the other thing is, if they're going to try, right, go back to what's this intersectionality, they're going to have a harder time continuing to ingrain themselves in the anti-vaccination, anti-vax movement if they continue to commit, you know, acts of egregious violence and aggression, because people aren't going to want to associate with them. If Proud Boys Patriots Prayer show up, despite the fact that court order's there at Skyview, and create havoc tomorrow, there are going to be leaders in the anti-vax, anti-mask movement. They're going to be like, we're not down with that. It's just because it's bad optics, right? It doesn't look good for us, right? We just want kids to die from COVID. We don't want people actually to harass them and physically threaten them with injury. We just want them to die slowly and horribly from COVID because my rights and freedoms. So we're not down with that strategy. So I'm more concerned over the chatter. I'm way more concerned over the chatter than I'm seeing for Washington, D.C. Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm joining the lizard people. Rex, totally. And this is where you get into, when you get into streamer culture, right? I've said this before. There's 3 types of streamers. You have videographer streamers. We think about videographer streamers. We go back last year. Saul Luna, right? A great example of a videographer streamer. Corey Elijah out in Wisconsin, another person. They let the cameras. They let the camera do a lot of their talking, right? They didn't really add much. I was a journalistic, streamer, or a Greatwood journalistic streamer. Love them, hate them. I don't want to get into it, right? You have CJ. CJ's a journalistic streamer. Ian's a journalistic streamer, and CJ and Ian not attached. Just giving you examples. These people We provided commentary. We explained what was going on. We explained in real time as best as we could, like, well, this happened because of this, or that's going to happen because this is going to happen. And then you have this third, which are activist streamers, right? And if we think of activist streamers, we think, and I know a lot of these people, I know I'm naming some people that are still streaming and some people aren't. Christina D, activist streamer. The first one that immediately comes to mind, right? Calypso Head, activist streamer. Those are just the two that pop right in my head. You could say that Joey, it depended on what was going on, right? Sometimes Joey was very much a journalistic streamer, and there were other times Joey was very much an activist streamer. My journey started as an activist streamer, and then I started to move. Certainly when I got to Polcam, I went a lot more journalistic. And part of the reason was with Polcam, I can't see what people are seeing in real time because it's all the way up there. So I'm left to narrate what is going on. Very similar to what Eric Ratewood was doing. And so to this whole point, I know it was another thing, right? So Rex, to your point, citizens' press shouldn't be. Yeah, completely agree. And there were most of the people, I'm not going to say all because I'm not familiar with everybody. Most of them were activist streamers on the right. Which then, of course, you get into this fuzzy line of, well, then are you a protester, right? When you're an activist streamer, the further you push the boundaries, you move further and further away from a journalist or, with journalistic intent, and you move more into the role of protester. And there's nothing wrong with that. Another person, a person who I think that I have like if somebody were to say to me, who is a model activist streamer? Farmer Barb. That to me, she is the gold standard. Absolute gold standard. Love her stuff. She is journalistic, but she is an activist at the same time, but she never crosses journalistic lines. But at the same time, she is a powerful advocate, and she does it really, really well. And like somebody were to say, activist, that would be, that's my line. I think Eric's back. Yeah, Lakota, right? Lakota and I were like cut from the same cloth, right? I was watching Lakota's stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I love this dude. It's like watching myself, it's like watching my own videos. Lakota's very, very journalistic. And very, very neutral. Anyway, that's my view on that. Yes, God, I love RX, and there's so many. This is not going to get me sad. There's so many people in that community I miss. There's just a ton of people that I miss. See, look at that. People are like, oh, RX, I know, I miss her. Look, we've gone really, really late. There's a ton of stuff to cover. The next couple of weeks in our state is so, so important. We're not in a place right now at this point where I can say, get vaccinated, because it's not going to move the needle if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. Please. Please. I don't have horns growing on my head. Not magnetic. I still can get jiggy. My cell reception didn't get any better. I'm still cis. I didn't get turned gay. People have had the vaccine now going back to May of last year, right? Because it was, in 2 or 3 years, everyone's going to start dropping dead. And yes, that's it. I see. Please, please. This is the one thing you can do. If you're not vaccinated, go get your first jab. That's one. It's not going to help us in the next couple of weeks because it takes like 5 weeks to go through the whole process, and you can't find a Johnson & Johnson shot anywhere right now. That's second thing. Mask. Please, please wear a mask. And then the third thing is, yes, we have to support business. And that isn't just a cap, right? Because you think of restaurants, right? These are small businesses. Support our small businesses. Don't eat outside. Do takeout. Don't eat indoors. Don't go to a bar and drink. Yeah, look, I'm a football fan. I'm so conflicted because the NFL is shit as an organization. And for I love football. By the way, I did this show and I didn't watch my boy Tom Brady tonight doing this show. And the people are like, "Fuck you, your boy." My mom, sorry, man. Patriots fan, and by proxy, I'll be a fan for Brady. He set another record tonight. I know that. Unless he didn't take the field, he set another record tonight. Yeah, exactly. What is this? I'm straight. Because that was it's going to turn you gay. You get the vaccine, it makes you gay. No, I'm not gay. I'm still cis. I'm still addicted to boobs. So I can just go, all this. It doesn't have graphene oxide. It doesn't. There's no microchips in it. We can just go through all of it. Please get the shot. Wear a mask. Social distance. Avoid crowds. That isn't to say don't support our restaurants, but and the last thing I was going to close on where I started going on to like football and stuff. Just just think about it. And do I really got to do this? Well, I should have to wear a mask. Thought the vaccines work and all that. Because there are children under 12 years old who can't get vaccinated. And because there are still people who can't get vaccinated because of immunocompromisation, and because people who are elderly, 70 and over, with multiple comorbidities, if they get a breakthrough case, they are getting extremely sick. And the mask isn't about you. The mask is about everybody else. And keeping your germs self-contained from others. The decision, we're almost to the point of no return. The decisions that we make as a state over the next literally 7 to 10 days is going to make or break us. Literally. Nobody wants to go where we're on the brink of going. Nobody wants this. You do not want this. It's not a joke, and it's real, and it isn't just going to be COVID. So please, there's no shaming. This is just, please. Because here's the thing. I'm not getting it. Blah, blah, blah. Fine. You go out last few warm days of the year we got coming here. You ride your motorcycle. You get in a really bad accident. You might not get the care that you think you're going to get. And it has nothing to do with the fact that, well, I didn't decide to get vaccinated. It's the other people who didn't get vaccinated who have clogged up the hospital. That's what it is. We're to this place now. We're really close to this place where it's all about the consequences for everybody. And it isn't just about COVID. It isn't just about save the children. And it isn't about just save grandma. The other thing is, I would say at this point, I'm going to go skydiving this weekend. If you're into I got thrill issues. You got the serious thrill issues. I'm going to go do some crazy mountain biking thing with my friends or blah. We're going on the shredder. Just hold off on that for a couple of weeks. Well, I'm going to go clean my gutters for the winter. I'm going to go climb it. This is not the weekend, and next weekend is not the weekend to do this. Don't be getting on ladders. I'm real serious. These are literally the things that you can do. Everybody has to get a little wussified for the next couple of weeks to give our medical community and our hospitals because that could literally make the difference between people having to make terrible decisions that don't want to make decisions. Oh, Rex, I've got wicked. Come on. Anybody who watched last year knows I've got thrill issues. If you're unemployed, self-quarantine. Please wear the face pants and watch the fingies. Very true. Oh, sure. I didn't know that about him. All right. Well, I'm still cis. I'm cis white male. Yeah, that too, Kelly. Love that quadruple-dyed hamster bot. I was a queer trans woman before, and I love it. Be boring. That's it. Look at this. See, I should just be boring for the next couple of weeks. You know, this is not the week like to do the Ghost Pepper Challenge or stuff. It's just not. Be boring. Don't do shit that can put you in the emergency room. Just don't. It really can make all the difference. That's where we're at. All right. Be good to each other. Have a good weekend. We will do, and I'll put this out in the thing. We will do the show on Tuesday because I really want the local community to fill the school board meeting. I mean, if you're not in Lake Washington, don't fill it to create noise. But you know there are going to be people in public content that are going to be there ranting about Inslee and Biden and masks, and you know it. So show our leaders that they are supported because we know they're supported. Well, we're not. We're the majority. No, you're not the majority. You're not even close to a majority. You are a tiny number. You are loud. You threaten violence. You use bullying and intimidation because it's all you've got left. But you are beyond outnumbered. Your numbers are shrinking, and your message isn't landing anymore. So all you have left is we're just going to try and scream louder. So if you want to support Lake Washington School District Monday, be there to be a rational voice. And with that, the loud I love that. The loud. Oh my God, just the Kiwi. I love it when just the Kiwi girl is here. I love it. I love it because it's like, oh my God, we've got New Zealand in the house. All right, everybody. Be good to each other. Have a good weekend. For the love of God, be safe. Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontent Antifa. Fuck you.
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're